Welcome to the Friday Night Chat. I am your host, Redneck National Capitalist. We're still doing the 1433 subscriber giveaway, so please subscribe to this channel and our main channel, of course. Tonight, we're going to cover a bunch of topics. Let's start with the internal chat. We got 9, not an argument. Any opening thoughts?
What's up, guys? We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children.
Celtic Master Race.
What's up, guys? I espouse the 14 words as well. That's about it.
Eric.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I don't know. I've been thinking about hierarchy lately, and it seems like some of you have like libertarian views, so I would be interested in discussing that with you.
All right, sounds cool, man. Iron Man Australia.
Yes. I'd just like to start by talking about Anita Sarkeesian being red-pilled. We talked about Lacey Green. Like, I heard this quote. I don't know where it's from, but, I think it's a fairly good indication she's headed in the right direction.
Evil brown people who need to be wiped from the earth by noble, righteous white men heroically fighting for freedom and justice.
Yeah, sounds about right. All right, Jaffa, what's up?
Hey, Jaffa here from the UK, also known as Siegmeyer. Happy to be here for the first time. Hail victory.
All right, sounds good. Rick Turpin from the ever so wonderful Britcast. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the shameless plug there, Alex. Yes, we're here to secure a future for our podcast and syndication. Maybe this drop might explain how I feel right now.
Maybe we can get syndicated by the BBC again. That was pretty great. Taco, what's up, man?
Base Sarkeesian. Like, I don't know if she got red pilled. I think she got black pilled or something. I don't know.
It sounded pretty red pilled to me, man. Zach, what's up?
Ready to get it on.
All right, let's get it popping. Since we have the Britcast fellows, we can talk about the London terror attack first.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the fire that happened in.
Not first.
Oh yeah, the terror attack that happened. Yeah, well, the attempted terror attack. Yeah, some of our brave boys in blue prevented a stabbing at Parliament once again.
Was it radical Islamic terrorism?
Yeah. Because, like you say, what's the chance of it being a skinhead, though? Because, like you say, though, in Britain, it's interesting how they've changed the dynamic now to whereby all extremism is the same. We can't say it's a Muslim, we have to say it's an extremist for. But yeah, it's obviously a kebab who's got a penchant for the knife of love. So, yeah.
They just released pictures of him, and he was a skinhead, but he was not a white skinhead. He was a very black skinhead with a big bushy beard, so he looked pretty Islamic to me.
Those are Wahhabi.
He was. He was a radical pacifist, probably a radical moderate.
Was skinhead or just like bald? Because there's a distinction to be made.
Well, a lot of hardcore Muslims, though, do shave their head, though. They usually have, like, say, shaved head and long Wahhabist beards. That's usually something to miss. But like I said, though, in Britain at the moment, though, everyone's literally on edge. I mean, I know people who don't normally, like, turn a second look, but they're turning around saying, I'm a bit on edge, there's Muslims everywhere. Like when you're going shopping, you're thinking, like, is that kebab going to start kebabbery now, or is he just going to buy his shopping? So it's the climate of fear is beginning to set in, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's about time. I would have imagined that it would have happened like the first 8 times. It's just absolutely tragic watching from afar. Like, it seems like the British are, the British police and, government. I don't want to just blame like the beat cops or whatever, but they're more worried about what are people going to say about this attack than the actual attacks occurring. And it seems tragic to me.
This week, though, in particular, though, we've had, whether we can segue into this, though, the London Tower fire. Unless, Jack, this, by the way, unless you got more info on the attempted kebabbing.
Me?
Yeah.
No, I don't, but I was just going to say you're exactly right about sort of, you guys feel like you're watching from afar, like, I don't know, like, I feel like I'm watching from afar and I fucking live here. And like, Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor of London, has been blaming all the like terror attacks on lack of funding for like police from the current government, because he actually works for the opposing government, but he's put a shitload of money, like millions of pounds, into this like anti-hate mob on Twitter. So he's like spending a lot of money catching people saying hateful stuff on Twitter, but he's not spending any money catching the actual terrorists who are like nail bombing little girls in Manchester.
Well, that's always the argument when you that's always the argument used, right? So like if you criticize the government's handling of education, for instance, right? It's just underfunded. It's underfunded, you see, and you'll point out, well, we've just pumped more money into it, and it doesn't seem like it's getting better, or like the healthcare service. It's just anything. It's always lack of funding. Lack of funding is always the go-to they go to, and even and that ignores that there's other things at play than just funding. So well, the police don't have enough funding. Then you can kind of take it to, well, what does enough funding look like? Do we have to have a British cop with a machine gun every 5 feet in order to prevent terrorism? What is proper funding?
From what I know, and maybe the boys here can highlight it more because I'm sure they know more than me. But from what I know about Sadiq Khan, is actually most of his funding is going towards searching out and finding quote-unquote hate crimes and cracking down on internet hate speech in Britain.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Because apparently it says in Britain there's 23,000 terror suspects, and Sadiq Khan openly on the BBC said, we've not got the resources to find them all, yet they have the resources to send like a 10-team police group round and kick your door in because you've sent a ghastly tweet about some Jews there. You know what I mean? So it seems interesting. They do have the ability to have all these forces when they need it for a troll, but no, apparently Abdul and friends, they're free to walk as they are.
Yeah, Piers Morgan of all people seemed like a pretty rational guy. Is like, holy shit, what the hell's going on in London? Like,
for once in his life.
Yeah. It's like he's gonna harass.
Yeah, he used to be such a twat.
Yeah.
I didn't like him when he had Alex Jones on his show, and he was trying to get America to hand in all their guns, but recently he's been pretty based.
Agreed.
Yeah, when Alex Jones like that, 1776 will rise again if you dare take our firearms.
If you try to take our firearms, 1776 will commence again. You hear that, scumbag? You hear that? I'll bite you.
You should get that as a sound drop.
In a box, you in the boxing ring. I'll beat your ass. Yeah, we go to so what's this about the fire you were talking about?
Yeah, well, the Great Fire of London Part 2. Apparently, on Wednesday, there was a massive tower fire, and it was probably, it's the worst one in England. It's now, as of now, claimed 70 lives that they know of.
70?
Yeah,
ending that building.
17.
A lot of Muslims.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is the thing. But when the initial news story were cast, apparently, one of the initial news items were evil British man whose room is on fire, knocks on a neighbour's door and then leaves. Now, apparently, a few hours later, it changed to, it's actually an Ethiopian taxi driver who bravely knocked on people's doors and saved many lives. But it's interesting, if it's a white man, it's an evil guy who basically, a guy just went, my house is on fire, took a picture, didn't even ring the fire alarm, knocked on a neighbour's door and said, there's a fire next door, and left. And apparently he saved many lives, and yet originally the story was that it was a British guy when it weren't. The next part, carry on. Yep.
I was going to say, I don't know if I'm just going to say what you're just about to say next, but the latest thing I heard about it is he packed a suitcase full of clothes before he warned anyone about the fire.
Yeah, he's on his. I mean, I personally think it's nuts. It's the first time I've ever heard of a fridge exploding, and they claim it was an electrical fault. Now, if I were going to put my conspiratorial hat on, I'd say, well, there's one or two things. It's either Ramadan and someone's done something stupid in a celebratory mode, or they've been doing bad things and putting them in the fridge and it's gone off early. Could be an option. But
yeah, I didn't think of that, but that sounds pretty legit.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's nuts. The entire building went up a lot quicker than it normally should have done, which raised the question, well, what caused the fire? And they're saying it's this wooden cladding on the outside of the building. Yeah, if we do a bit of deep dive of the autism, it turns out everyone's saying, even though it's the Labour local government who are responsible for this, Sadiq Khan, his two responsibilities are housing and police. Apparently, no, he's not responsible. It's evil Theresa May, even though all these building renovations happened under his watch. And it turns out Sadiq Khan has actually been, according to some articles I was reading, were given party donations by the same building groups that did these renovation works. So it's interesting. He signals there saying, "Oh, these evil people making a quick buck on poor people." He gladly takes their money. So he's been bought and paid for. But all along the way, he'll never admit that it was his own fault or Labour's fault. He'll always pin it on the Tories.
So what do they say? It's like an electrical fire or something?
Yeah, they
the
said
only way. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, they said it was an electrical fault in a fridge that caused it to explode. But then
Like what? Like the local government allowed somebody like just basically like remove like the circuit breakers or something. Like a fridge just doesn't just catch on fire and burn down an entire building.
I'm more interested in the fire suppression system. Like, is this an older building, or what's the story with that? Like, why didn't fucking sprinklers or something fucking go off? Or
it only just got renovated the year before, and apparently this is where it becomes a bit autistic now. I've worked in construction before, and I know how like fire safety works, and I know that them cables that run through buildings are like they're full of something called Pyrex, which is like you can't set fire to it. It has to be very hot before anything happens. So there's no reason none of the fire alarms should have not gone off. And also the fact is all this wooden cladding that they put on the outside of the building that spread the fire. Here's the autism. Apparently it's because of EU regulation that wood were put on, and it weren't another kind of material. But apparently all these people...
Because I didn't expect the details of that to come out until later after they do the fucking post-mortem, but like, you know, that would, like, okay, there's a fire, fair enough, that wouldn't be an uncommon thing, but you don't see buildings go up like that all the fucking time because of modern, you know, fucking countermeasures, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they were saying as well as they said, why were there no sprinkler systems? But anybody who lives in a tower block in Britain knows they don't put sprinklers in. Because again, it's all cost benefit. I mean, without sounding awful, all the people in that tower block were in social housing. Every one of them were on government benefits. All the rooms were provided for by the state. So again, like in Britain, it's a shame. I mean, obviously there's like the honest poor, but you've also got like the feckless poor in Britain. People who are saying like, "Well, I don't produce anything," but now they're now claiming they're questioning the method at which the curse provided for them. So they're moaning about substandard housing, and it's like, well, you're unproductive, and this is a really rich area. I mean, the entire area were put private rather than council properties. So it's like full of millionaires and stuff, and there's this like unsightly tower block in the middle with 600 Labour voters in it.
Well, I think we learned one thing. It's curry spice doesn't melt steel beams.
But it smelled in there.
Smelled like shit while I was doing it.
Oh god, I didn't think about that. Imagine all the Arabs fucking burning. That would have smelled terrible. Jesus.
Hang on. So because the building didn't fall down, we know George Bush didn't do it, right? Otherwise, it would have fell down.
Clearly, this wasn't an inside job, because if it was, you know, those buildings would have toppled the fuck over.
Yeah, this was
all the poor people who live round and about around it. There was a report on CNN that didn't get broadcast. Well, it got broadcast once, but it never got rerun because the guy like dropped an F-bomb on it. But he openly comes out and says, "I think rich people have set this fire to get rid of the poor." And literally the media platform to the... Instead of saying, "Wait a minute, some Ethiopian dickhead's fucked up and not done health and safety in his own flat," apparently know everybody bar the person who's done it and the local council who's responsible. You know what I mean? Everyone's to blame, barring, you know, the people actually responsible.
Well, to be fair, there are the NIMBYs, like not in my backyard people. And like, I wouldn't blame them. I wouldn't want that shit in my backyard. Like, fucking unload the third world into my backyard and this big fucking skyscraper.
Well, and that's kind of the tragic thing, because there's a lot of people that are sort of this upper class, middle class type of deal, and it's like, I love diversity. Diversity is great. Of course, my children aren't going to go to the school that's full of the diverse people. Of course, you know, I'm safe here in wherever the fuck, right? I live in the city, and it's full of all kinds of people. I see them from afar, from outside of my window. They don't live in my neighborhood. It's great. You know, we'll bring in the third world, and we'll send them out to, you know, rural communities or poor communities. You know, in England, of course, there's not a whole bunch of undeveloped land for them to go or wherever, but yeah, they're going to be living with the fucking poor.
I mean, this is an argument, actually. This tower fire is actually an argument against, like, saying we should really restrict immigration because a lot of well, not all, some of the tenants are Syrian refugees. So then you beg the question, right? You're obviously struggling to house them, so you have to put them into these, like, Warhammer 40k hive cities to keep them going. And yet people are saying, no, we've got room for more immigrants. Yet London's a blatant case of, well, people are in substandard housing or like, hovels. And yet people are saying, no, we've got more room. Yet this is an argument, like health and safety-wise, against immigration. It's a health hazard. You're going to take people from a war zone and put them in fire hazards. Play on people's heartstrings with this one.
Well, not only that, but you have a bunch of people that are unproductive. They aren't working. And then you wonder why people are getting radicalized because they don't have a job. They live in a shitty place. And then they go on and sit in like mosque all day and like, they're like, oh, my life sucks. Oh, my life is this. And then you have some imam that tells them like, well, you know how your life would be better? Like if you kill a bunch of fucking white people and then you'll have 72 virgins. Like it seems to follow that like, if your life is shit and somebody's telling you like how your life could be better, certain things might happen.
And I don't want to sound racist, but dramatic pause here. But aren't these people like come from places where they like cook inside with camel dung and stuff like that, like open fires? So just saying.
Well, funnily enough, and that was one of the things people said because Ramadan had just is in progress. Maybe that's one of the reasons the fire started because they often celebrate it with a bit of hijinks. Like the odd firecracker off or set a fire in the front room and shit like that.
Yeah, great hijinks like burning down a building.
Yeah,
hijinks like stabbing some women.
It'd be interesting.
Well, these people are from countries where they fire into the air at weddings and stuff like that, right? So building fire.
It'd be interesting to look at the religious sect breakdown of Islam in Britain. I'd be curious to see like what percentage of self-identified Islamics in Britain identify as like Wahhabists or, even just the general ones like Shia Sunni breakdown.
I imagine it's proportionally more than the average Muslim because Saudi Arabia in Britain and Europe pays for the extreme mosques. So like, let's say there's like a more peaceful. They don't have the funds to get a mosque together, while Saudi Arabia from outside just throws money at it.
If it's the Saudis, it's probably really heavy in Wahhabis because that's where it came from.
Yeah, like how many like Iranians? The Iranians are the ones like flooding Europe. My understanding.
Yeah, those are the Shias. Yeah.
Did Sigmire see all this happening, by the way, live when it were on?
What, the fire?
Yeah, did you see it live at the time?
I didn't see it live. I've caught up on some of the stuff. Did you see that Roadman conspiracy theorist?
The what theorist?
Roadman conspiracy theorist.
Well, go on, this is me.
Well, it was like they were interviewing guys out who were like turfed out of the building while it was on fire, and one of the guys was like typical like wigger roadman, all his hair in like plaits. And he like jumped in like, look, I'm not gonna lie, but I tell you guys, they're trying to burn this building down. And he like goes off on one like conspiracy theory about how he thinks it's all like done by the government and stuff. That was quite funny.
I mean, today it was quite a messed up situation outside Kensington. I mean, let's go into this for a moment as well. The ward of Kensington. Do you remember on the Britcast we mentioned that there were the last results came in like a few minutes before we went live, and that final Kensington where this fire happened. Let's go into the ward. Do you know what majority that ward won Labour by? You'll be surprised. 20 votes. That ward turned from blue to red. Now, why do you think the government is? Why do you think Labour, Corbyn and friends are saying you can't rehouse these people out of the ward? They all have to stay here because you've got 600 fanatical Labour voters. Yeah. You know what I mean? They're technically sent away elsewhere. And that constituency only has a 20 majority for Labour. So in a sense, that tower fire, I'm just hoping they do move all these people. I'm hoping Kensington turns blue again.
Well, it's kind of like Bernie Sanders recently. Recently he began pushing this like rent control policy and whatnot, saying that, in the United States, it's so expensive to live in certain places and how like it's unfair to the people that it's so expensive to live in these cities, and it's kind of like predisposes this idea that like if you're too poor to live literally where everyone is making a whole bunch of money in a city, that valuable land the government should pay so that you can be there, even though it's valuable land and therefore it costs money to live there. It kind of presupposes your right to live wherever you want. It's kind of the principle. But in all actuality, every time they do this, every time they set up these projects, like they did in Chicago, where they fucking turned the top story into a sniper's nest and shit, it always fails because they always end up living in fucking grovel, right? They don't take care of the building because it was given to them. It's just sort of this absolute failure every time. Because yeah, when you say, okay, we're gonna get all the poor people and we're gonna put all the poor people in one area, it always ends up a ghetto. It always ends up a fucking tragedy. And my understanding of Britain is that you guys have a lot of the rent control type deals. You have a lot of the housing projects and stuff.
Yeah, it's called social housing. It means that basically the state pays for most of it or all of it. And
yeah.
Like you're saying, that particular hive, that particular like tower block, every one of the tenants weren't private. You know, it weren't just like there were a handful of social people. They were all in social housing. So again, all these people, it's like a mad mentality. They don't pay for anything. Yet they already today at that town hall thing made demands of the council. Demands. They don't even produce anything. They've got to vote. You know what I mean? So it's insane almost. Literally, you've got a group of people who are, example, they just put all boilers in the place. And the residents were complaining that the boilers were 2 inches bigger than they used to be. It's like, be grateful that the state's even giving a shit. You know what I mean? But
yeah. And this is sort of the problem where, yeah, they don't have to produce anything of value. And like, I understand the argument that if someone's crippled in an injury or something, I say that there should, maybe there'd be something. But the idea that just, well, I don't really work or I really can't produce a whole bunch of value, and we're going to get together, and now we're a voting block, and now resources that the state gives them is beneficial, and they have a vote, even though they produce very little of value, if not anything. And it even gets more ridiculous when you consider the fact that some of these people were not born even in the country. So it's not even that they're just imposing a cost because they were born genetic underclass. It's that they were allowed to come and given this power over people who actually produce shit, actually, do something of value.
Certainly don't give people
about gerrymandering, saying that it's highly influential in the electoral process here, and compared to actually transforming the demographics of a given area, that's pretty trifling in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
How does the government transfer funds to a lot of these over here it's Section 8 housing? Do they do like the states where they give them like programs where they get free housing and then they get EBT, which is like a selected fund directly for certain things, a paycheck?
They get everything. Well, it depends. The state pays for like the house and the other aspects, and then they're also entitled to dole money, job seekers allowance and things and other benefits. But once you go and get your job seekers allowance, it's just 80 quid in your hand once you get out of your bank. There's no restrictions what you can spend that dole money on.
Oh,
so in a sense, in Britain, in a sense, like the honest poor, like they might be on income support or like working families tax credits, and that'll like top up your meager income. But there's people out there who do nothing, turn up to the job centre once every 2 weeks, they get 80 quid. And that's their life, that's their job, they class it as.
And some of them work as well, doing cash in hand jobs.
Yeah.
They probably do that and also use it to reinvest in selling drugs in the community or something like that.
Yeah,
buying food and then like buying something that's somewhat scarce and then going over to where it's a little bit more expensive and then selling it there, but they didn't have to invest the original money to earn, so it's just all profit to them. Here, what they do with EBT is they'll go to a store and then be like, "Hey, man, I'll give you a discount, man. You just pay me, and I'll give you I'll buy it, and then I'll sell it to you for like 25% less." And they'll buy people's groceries and then get money there.
Yeah, but that's because they're over here. They're restricted.
Yeah,
they're restricted in what they can do with it. But just getting the money in hand is a totally different scenario.
That's why over here our benefit culture seems to be more acute than over there. Like across the pond, like from our perspective, it almost seems like, wow, it's pretty brutal for benefits. And yet you guys are still saying that there's a system, open to abuse. Imagine what it's like in Bangistan, where literally
it's only getting worse, man. It's only getting worse.
The big thing I noticed though about all this, so like I mentioned about that Kensington place, it got 20 Labour majority seats, so therefore that explains why they want to keep these people in the ward. Apparently, all these people now, like I say, they go in there making demands, saying we want. And it's interesting because they go making demands, yet the government said this is standard practice. We give you a new house, we give you a bit of a check, so at least it covers it. And yet these people are literally screaming that it's not enough what they're being given. Apparently, protest today that stormed the town hall. The guy who runs it, apparently, and this were nuts. There were a Muslim guy with a megaphone there. So we did a bit of a background check on him. It turns out he was arrested 10 years ago for terrorism offences. His fingerprint on a Bosnian bomber's bomb-making manual. So apparently that guy with the megaphone... What's that, Iron Man? Sorry.
What are the odds?
Yeah, what are the odds? Because I thought, why is this thing becoming a Muslim protest? Because most of the people outside were like in hijabs and stuff. And then you think, right, the guy up front and centre is a known terrorist who, like, obviously 10 years later is now free. But again, the people who also were there, they all had pre-made signs. Right, so example, there were people there with signs saying, I've lost my relative. So in a sense, you think, yeah, you're a genuine person of concern. Yet Socialist Workers' Party were there with signs saying, Tories out. I'm not being funny, but the fucking tower fire's happened and now they're politicising it. And Jeremy Corbyn's already said, and it's frightening this, he said, any free houses now in Kensington and Chelsea potentially could be seized and given to them. And literally, you've got rich people in mansions going, holy fuck, you've got a socialist, a guy who's lost an election, yet thinks he's going to be Prime Minister, saying to people like, yeah, we are going to take your property off you and house people in it. So it just gives you, I'm glad the Tories won this election, is all I'm saying. That's an indication of what Corbyn we're going to do.
That should be a line for somebody. If the state is literally just going to seize your house in order to give it to somebody else, like at that point, it's worth fucking fighting them. I mean, that should draw the fucking line. I mean, they are taking your house not because you've committed a crime, not because you're not paying your taxes even. Like, just, no, we're going to give it to this guy because he needs it.
You'd be surprised how many people in Britain support that kind of thing, though, because we have such a, cultivated perception of the rich, screwing us over. And it's not something I agree with. I don't think, theft is justifiable under any terms, but a lot of my people I know and the general sentiment is people are supporting this kind of communism.
Well, I can understand that, right? But I would kind of assume that I'm going to have to kill, even if I supported it hypothetically, right? I would assume that people are going to do something about it if you just steal their home off of them.
Mm.
I just want to point out that in the 1600s, when you had the Great Fire in London, and people sort of thought this could have been started by those fucking French or fucking Dutch immigrants, right? And they went around and they fucking started lynching people and shit. What happened? Did your balls fall off? In the meantime, last couple of 100 years?
Well, see, those guys weren't brown.
Yeah, it's completely right. Something's been taken out of the spine of Britain. And again, it's one of these things it's like a massive form of mind control. So, example, the laws are in place now for hate speech, which doesn't apply in the States. So if you turn around and say, nigger packy kike or something, someone can arrest you for it. Yet, therefore, it stifles debate. Then even just minor, tangents on that. So, for instance, just questioning Islam now turns out to be racist. So,
yeah, well, this is what I've been talking about. You can't do democracy if you ban fucking words or discussions or speech about fucking anything. If you ban one single fucking word like nigger or something like that, you can't even discuss whether you should be able to say nigger at the next election. Are we going to change that law back or something, right? You don't have a fucking democracy anymore, so Democrats can't even fucking do democracy properly.
Well, I'd say that the spine's probably there. It's just, it has to do with popular moral conditioning that's been in place by the media. And over in Britain and a bunch of the other, EU, previous EU countries or whatever, it's mandatory to pay like a cable bill and things like that. Isn't that correct, Rick? Like you guys have to pay for the TV, and so everybody probably has TV in their homes, and they get the propaganda right there every fucking day, molded and shaped just for them. While over here, we don't have that. I mean, we still have this kind of idea of this moral molding that's being pushed by, quote unquote, popular culture from the media. But people have an option.
We have the ABC over here, and Canada has CBC, right? Like, I mean, that's a
but we can opt out.
Yeah,
we have BBC, and you are kind of forced to pay for it. If you own a TV, they'll basically harass you if you're not paying it, and they'll like keep coming around your house and trying to they try and catch you out because they can fine you if you're watching TV and you haven't paid the license. But if you genuinely don't watch it, you don't have to pay for it. But most people do.
Oh,
in Australia, they just take it out of our taxes and give it to the ABC, and then they fucking propagandize us with fucking greeny bullshit. You don't have to watch that TV station.
So basically,
you pay for it anyway.
So basically, there's no cutting the cable where you're like, I'm just not going to pay for this anymore, and I don't do the whole cable TV thing anymore.
You can.
You can, but yeah, they'll harass you about it.
But
even if you don't,
straight out of 1984, you can't opt out.
It's insane. In Britain, you're forced to pay for your own propaganda. So in a reasonable country, at least the government would have enough money put aside to pay for the people's propaganda. But Britain goes one step further and makes you pay for your own. And the BBC, though, it doesn't even represent the demographic of our country. So in reality, there should be, because there's 8% ethnic, 92% of the shows should be white Christian centric. But they don't. Every BBC programme, they get awarded for how many ethnic. So, example, like old historical dramas, they have a penalty put on them because they can't obviously have like a Negro as fucking, Chaucer or something. You know what I mean? But yeah, they're trying to rewrite like things like Canterbury Tales and stuff full of black people to get around it. You know what I mean? That sort of thing.
I think there's an actual scoring system for that. I think Iron Man knows about it. Iron Man, do you know there's like a scoring system based on diversity and having like certain people in like movies and TV?
No, that's not. I don't know anything about that.
I'd have to look that up. I know it exists.
I've heard of it too.
No, I've heard of it too. I forget what the hell it's called.
Yeah, now it's bothering me. Fuck.
I know in Britain that's definitely the case though, because like I say, historical dramas, there's like a perverse incentive not to make them. So if you're a producer of a documentary or a film and you're like, oh shit, not enough Negroes, then you might not make it.
That probably suits their agenda just fine as well.
I don't know what
if you made a Sherlock Holmes like a nigger like that, you get like bonus points for that or something.
Yeah.
I don't know how it relays, like how, say you get a good score. What is that? Do you just get to put that on your movie, or do you get like more funding or some shit? I don't know.
Who the fuck knows?
If you just to fight back against that, you made a show where the queen's a nigger. Like you just make a black queen. Right? How would that go down?
Well, you get good accolades from like Mother Jones and Huffington Post, like
salon articles for you.
Nobody actually buys the product. They're like, this movie was shit from the beginning.
How would that?
It'll be like the Ghostbuster movies where nobody bothered to see it.
So how would that work, Iron Man? Like they just give you money. Like if you made the Queen black, they just give you money for historical accuracy, or?
Yeah, it's like an endowment of the arts. Like that's the way I look at it. Like it's the same kind of shit, right? They give money to people who produce shit that no one wants to watch, right? Instead of just fucking let art fucking just fucking let 1,000 flowers bloom, live or fucking die by your popularity and ability, like naturally. They want to force this fucking shit.
Well, all I have to say is that when you think of the best artists in existence, right? The best artist of history. Did they just pay a whole bunch of people who weren't talented and didn't know what they were doing to do that? I don't believe so. I don't believe the greatest.
No, you had Patreons in the past, like fucking Mozart and fucking guys like that. But I mean, obviously, those guys want someone who's fucking actually producing something good, right? When it's one person. It's like with Patreon, like fucking you're gonna get Patreon donations on YouTube if you're fucking running a good channel. If your channel is shit and you make shit videos, no one's gonna give a fuck.
Yeah, but they also did other things for money. Like they didn't just like people in the past didn't just produce art. They actually produced shit that was like worth a fuck. That people are like, oh, I'll pay you for this.
The best artists certainly did, but I don't know of any. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just my ignorance, but I don't remember a time in any European hit, like any great European artist that was like the king took from the fucking nobles to pay him.
But the king's the king is the fucking government in those old fucking things. So he is paying artists to make propaganda. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci was fucking making shit for the fucking Catholic Church and shit like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's doesn't mean he wasn't a good artist necessarily, but like, this is
yeah.
There's always been this propaganda fucking arm of art, and you get paid for doing propaganda.
You're correct. I think even some of the stuff for the people I hate, they had pretty good art. Like some of the Soviet stuff was pretty good.
But there's no point. There's no justification for it in a fucking free market, capitalist fucking society, right? There's just no fucking reason you need fucking people making statues of fucking George Bush, Obama, or fucking Trump for that matter, or anything. Like
unless you want
statues of fucking assholes like that of politicians.
Who wants a statue of naked Trump?
I want a statue of Trump.
To be fair, they did make a statue of naked Trump, but it was not from a very nice perspective.
That was anti-Trump propaganda, wasn't it?
Yep.
Little dick joke.
Oh, small hands. He's got small hands. How can he lead the country? He's got small hands. He can't even grasp the country. He barely can get his fingers around Florida.
He's orange.
Them stakes were so big that his hands look small.
Florida, all right.
The artist
don't
who
believe
made those statues was very echoey as well.
I don't believe all this hype of him grabbing some woman's pussy because he has very small hands. It wouldn't be possible. It's physically impossible.
He had a very large labia.
I mean, would you guys think it was weird if you fucking worked for like a company and they fucking decided like, oh, you had shares in a fucking company, more to the point, and they decide, oh, we're gonna spend fucking buku fucking amount of money to make a statue of the CEO. That's unjustifiable, like business-wise, right? Like you might have some, like, there's probably statues of fucking like Ray Kroc or something for like founder of fucking McDonald's franchise and all this shit, right? But like some guy you fucking hire after the company's created, like who's just CEO for a couple of years, then he fucking works for another company or some shit like that. It's fucking insane, the fucking idea of like building statues to presidents, and I mean they're fucking employees.
A lot of the things, though, they did in Renaissance Italy, though, I mean, example like Lorenzo de Medici, he paid for it all himself, though, through his profits from his banking industry. So, and again, all the statues he were making, like glorifying present temporal leaders, like people from the past, like Michelangelo's David and stuff. So, a bit of a different spin than today. And like I said, in the medieval period, we usually, individual kings or lords would, like, sponsor the person. I mean, even... was it now, what's the one, Leonardo? People would pay for his paintings, and a decade later, they weren't even finished. So,
yeah, God, I never finished anything you fucking started.
Lazy cop. Yeah, chaps. More news, or should we segue into something else?
Yeah, we can segue into, well, if you got anything in particular, otherwise we can get into the GOP killer.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, like you can see that coming.
Dun, dun, dun.
Take me out at the ball.
We're back into more stuff.
Yeah, take me out of the ball game. So just a run through of what happened. Steve, I can't pronounce it. Slisk. I don't. Fuck.
Solis?
Yeah. Solis was shot by James Hodgkinson, a 66-year-old Bernie bro, with an SKS and a 9mm handgun. Solis is still in the hospital, but James was shot by police after firing. He asked whether there were GOP, people, representatives in the Republican Party playing ball. When he got the yes, then he reportedly got his rifle. The security detail got in a gunfight with him that lasted about a minute.
His assault rifle, his mega assault death dealing rifle.
Yeah, but don't worry, because like it's funny, like if they would have passed, like that gun would have been acceptable during the '90s gun ban, like during the Clinton era ban. So like don't worry about it. Like at least he stuck by his principle and didn't use a high capacity clip zine.
It wasn't like a rail fed rifle, like only 10 rounds, like you pushed it in through the top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the 10-round fucking rifle. All you have to do is to confuse these like left wingers. Is like if you sell them fucking rifles, just take the sights and like fuck them all up and then send them out. If they do dangerous things with them, they won't hit anybody.
Yeah, but it just got, to me, it seems like a continuation of what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot more violence, I think, coming up. You have these people calling for like a revolution and stuff. And I mean, certainly people on our side do that to a degree, but you have like the mainstream media, sitting there doing it to all these fucking boomers. Like I said, the guy's 66 years old and he thinks fucking Donald Trump's literally like Hitler and that like it's right around the corner. They're coming to get us. Personally, I was surprised that it was a Bernie Sanders supporter. I thought for sure it would be like some Clintonian type,
Clinton.
Well, what a fucking loser, though. I mean, 66 years old. Like, dude, like shouldn't you just be like sitting it out at this point? Like, maybe I haven't looked into I haven't, not maybe, but I haven't looked into this guy's background story. But like, does he have like boatloads of like grandkids that he's worried about, like their future, or is he like just some?
I investigated the guy's background a little bit. Actually, he's a real piece of shit. Actually, he adopted a couple of foster children that he then molested, and they like ran away from him.
So what? He's like LARPing as like some sort of like a revolutionary, like who used to be like a pedophilia or some shit.
What a good advocate for Bernie's democratic socialism. All right.
He's got to compensate for a lot to be a fucking hero and shit, I guess. But I just went 2017 minus 66 and 1951. So he's a fucking 60s hippie, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if he thought about that. Like when he's sitting there like smoking weed, back in the fucking 60s, he's sitting there like, yeah, man, I'm opening my mind. I wonder if he thought how he was going to die was he was going to shoot at a Dorito Hitler with a California legal rifle at a ball game. It's a pretty fucking interesting way to go out. I just feel like there's a lot more people that are like this. There's a lot more people that have believed, have fell for the narrative that has been pushed in the mainstream media.
Who fucking knew that Jon Stewart? Who fucking knew that Jon Stewart could militarize Bernie Bros? I mean, come on.
Come on, he's the the archetypal American hero. He baseball, guns. He political revolutionary, like
molesting children. Yeah,
molesting children. Yeah, come on, Goy.
Well,
he is a progressive.
He's a progressive.
Age is just a number. Don't judge me.
I don't know what's more embarrassing to the left. The fact that their guy did it, the fact that he didn't kill anyone.
Well, I was thinking about this too. Like, okay, so he's shooting from the stadium with what seemed like an open sight rifle from the fucking Soviet era that, and he's going to, shoot all these fucking people at 300 fucking yards. Yeah, it's pretty hard to, I'm surprised he actually hit anyone. Because you
didn't expect competence from these people.
Yeah, it didn't seem like he was like a fucking army sniper, a ranger sniper or some shit.
Well, I mean, if he would have actually shot and killed people and then just got arrested, like he would have at least been, guaranteed a professorship at some, Ivy League college.
Well, they would have had a nice interview with him. He would have been on all the major, mainstream news channels explaining, how he's not crazy. He just simply wanted to kill them, and it was totally justified.
Yeah, he'd be the second person in world history to get a postpartum PhD next to Trayvon.
Yes. He'll be the next. I mean, he's probably in heaven
300
right now.
yards is a comfortable distance for a modern weapon, by the way. If you've got an optical sight and stuff like that, iron sights you can still, still pretty comfortable. But you got to be using something that's for that. It's sort of designed.
Yeah, but when
around
you're a
that range.
66-year-old overweight man,
maybe
with a
it's
shitty
just
rifle.
maybe it's just me. Like I always hear these incidents, and because I was in the army, and I always hear they only killed 2 or 4 or 6 people. I was like, what a basic bitch! Come on, guy, you have fucking overwhelming arm superiority. You at least kill 14 people or something. I don't know. What the fuck is wrong with these people?
I feel like I don't know. I've never been in that situation, but I mean, your heart's racing. You're fucking nervous. People are about to shoot back at you. I mean,
he was shooting through a fence as well.
Yeah, he probably was never.
That sounds kind of awkward.
Well, and I would doubt that he actually took his rifle out and put a couple thousand rounds through it to really get used to it. I doubt he even knew how to sight the thing in. To get it, an SKS is capable of shooting, quarter-sized or
all guns are dangerous
at 100 or 2.
All guns are dangerous and they kill. So you could put a gun in a child's hand and he could be a mass killer. So we need to ban all guns. That's probably his.
Obviously the number of rounds in the magazine's too high, so we got to reduce it down to 2.
Yeah, so that's probably his. He was like, I'll show these fucking liberal, or I'll show these fucking conservatives. I'll shoot them with a California legal gun. Look, this one isn't even scary. It's got wood stock on it.
Well, did you see the Washington Post, what their response to it was? It's oh, well, these GOP senators and congressmen were shot at, and their response to the shooting is exact opposite response of normal Americans. Because they're oh, no, fucking, we should be able to carry fucking weapons too. So, of course, the media is taking this and spinning it on its head, oh, so normal people want to defend themselves instead of just waiting for cops to show up. Who would have figured?
Well, it was a private security detail that actually shot and killed him.
Well, you got kitchen knives, don't you, Taco? That's enough.
I think it's important to keep into perspective that the whole thing is not a joke. There's still 534 of those assholes running around.
Yeah.
But on this, I wanted to talk about the wider political reaction. All these people with their solutions to violence, and people saying, "Oh, we shouldn't be like the left and be snowflakes about fucking shit," and people claiming hypocrisy, right? So one of the best things I heard, responses I heard to this, was Ben Shapiro, who's here with us today, and but he was still shut up. So he was, but he's still off the mark a little bit, right? Sort of broke it down, okay, well, you should be able to hold up a fucking severed head and all this kind of shit. It's poor taste and all this kind of crap, and he's trying to fucking break it down and trying to Jew weasel his way around. So the right wing can, we haven't done anything really wrong, and the left wing, they're violent. People are trying to spin things like that. But he's trying to break it down to principle, at least, right? But the thing is, you should be able to fucking say anything you want, right? And people can like it or not. And fucking, it's, if someone goes out and shoots someone, it's on their ass.
Yeah, but I mean, really, the idea politically of using, you're gonna do something. Well, it's not really tied in what you're saying that well, I see, but yeah, the idea that you're gonna be the assassin that kills, literally, it accomplishes almost nothing in the vast majority of scenarios, right? To be the fucking lone gun, it's retarded.
There's another little interesting thing. It's
not effective. It's much better. It's much better politically to use state violence than it is, because if you actually win politically, then you sort of, to a degree, you have access to violence on an industrial level. You have access to the economy of scale of violence. And that's why commies are dangerous. Go ahead. Go ahead, Iron Man.
I think he's dropped his microphone.
Well,
Oy vey.
the interesting
Well,
fact is Rand Paul was on the field and administered aid to the congressman that was shot. And his father also used to administer aid to his co-workers that had been shot. So, you know, like father, like son, kind of.
Well, and Rand and Ron are both medical doctors, so they're actually qualified to be the first there and administer aid before other techs get there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting though. You know, Rand Paul, Ron Paul, these people who were there, you know, actually getting shot at, and they're still not out there calling for gun control.
Well, there was I brought that up to a bunch of leftists. I said, hey, you know, just to like prove my point being, you know, ridiculous, like turning their arguments on them. So I'm like, yeah, we need to ban this left-wing hate speech. You know, it's causing violence. Like they're advocating violence. It's terrible. Like we need to do something. We need to block them from Twitter and stuff. And like their comments, like, no, it's okay because like here's Rand Paul saying that you should resist tyranny. You know, this guy's he was just resisting tyranny by shooting a fucking GOP congressman.
Can I ask a question about this, by the way, Jack?
Go ahead.
What would have happened if a Republican had shot a Democrat? Can we imagine that the media, like Fox News, would turn around and say, I think it's everyone's fault. Let's just calm down and tone down our rhetoric and let's have a breathe. You know
Every
what I mean?
news outlet would be reporting on it and saying, white males need their guns taken away. That's probably what would have happened.
Fucking white male!
Well, the thing about that too is that if Republicans shot at Democrats, you know, if the situation were reversed, I guarantee the death count would have been a hell of a lot higher. Republicans actually know how to fire a gun.
They would have been like,
That's a
let's
good
bring a gun. We'll use like this Remington. Oh yeah, it's good for long range. I've shot it a few times. We have nice glass on it. It'll actually hit the target.
Yeah.
There'd be
Ammo.
You got.
there'd be international news coverage at a goddamn pride parade, and Chuck Schumer and Amy Schumer would be there saying, we need to get rid of guns to be more inclusive, and it would be on every TV station across the world.
Is Chuck Schumer related to Amy Schumer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does Eric, do you have anything to say, bud?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the freedom of speech issue, you're not free to openly collude to assassinate the president. You're not free to, you know, plan violent acts. So when you have people, you know, holding severed heads up, how close does it get before it amounts to, in practice, inciting people to violence?
Yeah, but was it?
I don't think it does in either case. Like, so here's the thing, right? So when it comes to like the Kathy Griffin thing, right? Like everyone's screaming hypocrisy because, like, you know, they were saying fucking people were inciting hatred against Obama or some shit fucking like 4 years ago or 8 years ago. So what you got to do in this situation, and this is a thing that I think even Ben Shapiro is like missing, and a lot of people are missing, hold their feet to the fire. Like anyone who's switched position, like they're hypocritical, is fucking. You don't go, you're a hypocrite and point and fucking and whine. What you got to do is say, look, your position is inconsistent. So either fucking denounce your last fucking thing you said about people inciting violence against Obama. I think Griffin's got the fucking right to fucking do that, right? So fucking at least be consistent, like really hold their feet to the fire and get them to like stand on a particular principle, right? That's what you got to fucking do. So like Megan Fox, like she did this video where she's talking about the severed head thing, and she's saying, ha ha ha, you know, this bitch is gonna lose her fucking job and all this kind of shit, and we're gonna like make the fucking leftists fucking squeal, all right? We're gonna fucking give them a dose of fucking their own medicine, and we're gonna fucking make them until they fucking stop doing this shit, right? And yeah, you can do that, but what you're gonna do is fucking it's got to amount to a principle. I'm not fucking being a snowflake. I'm not whinging about you fucking holding up a severed head. I think anyone should be able to do that. But you said fucking 8 years ago, and this is inciting violence. Pick one.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I don't think Kathy Griffin is colluding with other people to assassinate the president.
No, it's not a credible threat.
I don't. Now, you could say that, like, if you just did that, right, the police might go, okay, yeah, this is kind of like probable cause. Maybe we'll try to get a warrant, open an investigation, but
Sure.
The actual act itself is not illegal.
Yeah. So, I mean, if people are going to visit fucking Ted Nugent, if the the Secret Service is going to visit Ted Nugent, right? Yeah, they should fucking give her a call and fucking see what a fucking deal is. I don't think anything's going to fucking happen realistically, and shouldn't.
But I
Well,
thought
as
that
far as deplatforming, right? You want to take at least the ability of people who are holding up severed heads to have a major media presence. Doesn't seem tasteful at the very least.
And regardless of the legal action taken by the government, she's experiencing, sanctions in a more free market sense. All sorts of people who were used to patron her and used to support her, they're no longer tuning in. They're like, this is too far. So regardless of the legal action, and I tend to agree with Iron Man, it's like pick a principle. Either it's all okay or none of it's okay, but you don't get to leapfrog back and forth. There will be consequences that have nothing to do with the government. And Kathy Griffin probably will not be employable for a vast majority of gigs that she used to take.
No, maybe she will. Maybe she'll be infamous and fucking she's got all this coverage and everything. So maybe they'll just rehire her next year and she'll be on with fucking Anderson Cooper and all that kind of crap.
Yeah.
I think that's
What
likely,
about
right?
like Twitter, Facebook, right? People who have right-wing views are often censored by those private institutions. And if you can use this as rhetoric to say, well, maybe people calling for white genocide shouldn't be okay on Twitter, like it seems commensurate.
Right.
Well, just stick to a principle, like fucking either way. I mean, see, like the problem with the white male fucking privilege fucking bullshit. This is just like a little loophole that they fucking created, racist against whites, right? I'm fucking against racism, like ironically enough, and like I say nigger as a political protest and shit like that, right? But it's like you should be able to like the shit that's illegal and the shit that's in poor taste, and being in poor taste isn't illegal.
I think Kathy Griffin basically, at the end of the day, the simplified, zoomed out sum of everything that happened is she made a shit joke, and because of her shit joke, she's like lost her job.
Yeah, there's a lead fart joke, and she should be fucking killed for that, right? Like in a metaphorical sense. But I mean, the problem is when shit like this happens, people will scream hypocrisy. The people being accused of hypocrisy, and they're obviously fucking like, and they've got two different standards, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. Like they get caught out, and they start saying, "Well, there was, say you're against Kathy Griffin with this blood in this one, so the blood makes the difference, right? Like the guy running around with the Obama mask was a rodeo clown or whatever the fuck, right? And it's like, no, that's like you're making all these little fucking distinctions so you can have your cake and eat it too, for that makes fucking logical sense and validly fucking you got a valid argument for, and stick to that.
Well,
remember the
and I would say what is good for the goose is kind of good for the gander. Like it's you can turn around their stuff to them. So like
their own standards on themselves. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is where like I said, I was going into a group that was mostly leftist, and all of a sudden I'm saying, no, we need to ban your speech. Companies should ban you from speaking because there's violence. You see, it's hate speech. You're spreading hate speech against us by calling us all Nazis, and they flip out.
Yeah, actually, that's actually what I was trying to say, and I fucked it up. But like, yeah, you can turn their standards around on, but you don't have to live by their standards or even accept them. You say, I don't fucking accept this standard, but this is your stand, and I'm applying it to you.
Yeah, and like even with state action. Hold on, Gook. Let me show you in the broadcast. All right. Yeah, like, ideally I would want fucking freedom of speech, right? I'd want this all to work out. But when they're sitting there saying, hey, we're going to suppress you, we're going to fuck you up, I love to switch it around on them because all of a sudden then they're quoting the Constitution. All of a sudden they're, it's un-American to ban people. It's un-American. And it's like, exactly. Well, then don't fucking do it to me. Right?
Yeah, and get them to renounce their previous fucking statements. That's what you want to do, right? So, like, while you've got them fucking in a pincer, you want to fucking like get them to pick one way or the other.
Yeah, and you could do this politically, right? Like push for fucking banning, especially like Trump, right? If the Republicans in general, like they're going to basically be able to pick the Supreme Court nominee. They know that if they tried to pass an anti-free speech law, it's going to get struck down, right? But it might be worth it to do it, right? We're going to ban these fucking hateful leftists or whatever, You could do that.
It's a no-win situation for them, right?
Yeah.
Regarding the inconsistency, though, I thought that Trump's speech were causing hate. But it's interesting how the left can get away with unbridled. I mean, for instance, imagine holding a head of Obama by a Republican person. Again, that would have caused.
Yeah, and remember that's what people say when this stuff happens, right? And then it just then 4 years later they're saying it again and saying it again. Whereas if you hold to a ridiculous standard and just say, okay, now I want you to either announce what you said before, or I want you to fucking say it's okay in this case. Right, and they whichever one they pick, they're fucked.
Basically, you just don't want them to be shifty kikes. That's about it. stick to a basis. Like if you're gonna want it this way, then at least I know how to operate around you. But it's all when it's good for their in group, they'll do anything but by their own means to help their in group, and do everything by their means to fuck the out group, and that's what liberals are nowadays.
Well, at the moment, the left is now got because they're in opposition in most countries now, they're allowed to be politically violent. Yet again, as soon as a Republican or a Conservative in Britain turned violent, everything would turn against them. It's acceptable for the left to be violent, but not us. And again, the left doesn't disavow their own hardcore element, but we have to. So we seem to be at a distinct disadvantage by being on the right.
Yeah, just a blatant double standard. And it's got to be pointed out.
It's a rational double standard in that conservatives doing those sorts of things are actually dangerous, whereas liberals tend not to be. So you don't have to censure them from the deep state perspective, from the political perspective.
Well, sure, but they also don't want, white America to sustain itself. So that's why they use the useful idiots of liberals to push for mass immigration.
You don't have to be a snowflake when you do this shit, right? And say people want to contact Kathy Griffin's advertisers and fucking get her off the air, right? I can't fucking stop it, right? It's fucking internet. It's these are anonymous fucking random fucking people in the world. I can't fucking stop anyone doing that, nor should I fucking have the power to, right? So, your fucking shit's come back on you. I don't fucking agree with the snowflake shit. I'm not a snowflake. But I can't fucking stop that. Too bad for you.
You pointed out another hypocrisy, right? Where it's in group, out group. Those are the people that they hate that. You can't do that. You can't. That's denounceable. It's evil to have the principle of my in group. I put it above the out group. Because it's more in relation to me, either mimetically or genetically or whatever. No, you can't do that yet. All their standards change when it's dealing with the in-group versus the out-group.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hear this shit with the leftists. They'll say, for example, New Zealand, Australia, America, Canada, the diaspora countries, right? They're like, you can't say that only white people are here because there were already native people here, or you brought slaves over here. So if you really care about that, why don't you go back to Europe? Why don't you go back to Europe? But that they don't really give a shit about principles or logic or being consistent, because there's this article, you can look it up, some leftist, The Guardian or some shit like that, wrote an article saying there's no such thing as an indigenous Britain. So they really don't care about principles at all, because if that were true, then at least we could be all right, well then Europeans have a right to their own homogeneous. So that's
all right. Then all you fuckers, by that standard, then you could say all you fuckers need to go back into your true home, which was the ocean, which you all fucking crawled out of. You've all appropriated the land. Okay, you used to all be fish at one point. Get back in the water.
We must create the city of Rapture.
The city of Rapture.
We're moving back to the ocean.
But that's the pity about the UK being cucked by all these fucking muzzies, right? Is that, if it did come to that, you could say, well, that's our fucking, Holy Land, right? That's our fucking Israel, right? Where all white people could go back to, because we fucking own it. and it's like for that to get overrun by a bunch of fucking brown fucking trash, that sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, regarding like the truth, though, I mean, people say in Britain, even to people like me, they go, "Well, you're all just a mongrel race." But like my particular line, like part of the ancient Brythonic framework, my family particularly. So if anyone, I mean, other people in Britain, yeah, they might turn around and say, "Well, we were later editions." Not my family. I've been here since day one. So, you know what I mean? With
the mongrel race, but allow more immigrants in, and you should let your daughters fuck them, and you shouldn't be racist.
Well, it's is that even an argument? So, like, okay, say if it's even true, it's like, okay, does that mean I have to go through with this policy now? Oh, well, you got me there. I have to change my views 100%. I can't, like, have an abstract idea of the self and my people or for my own interests. It's
not even an abstract idea. It's just real. It's like your physical body.
Well, yeah, but even in sake of argument, it doesn't even work.
Well, race doesn't exist and it doesn't matter, but you're a mongrel race. You're not pure. Therefore mixed with Africans, right? It's like, well, that's fucking retarded, right? Like if every single, if the fucking race mixed with a smaller sub race, if we all mixed with fucking Eskimos or some shit, we'd still have the new fucking race that was created of that, and you would have more of a say to that living there and being half fucking original Britain or whatever.
In my case,
than a sub-Saharan African.
In my case, it was really cruel though, because my family name, we got it in 600 AD. We were, put it this way, we were named like a fucking beast. We lost our Welsh language. We were given a name and then penned up. And then that was out of 40 markers, 6 Anglo markers are on my line. So they had the audacity.
Your name is Toby. What's your name?
Well, that's the case. I mean, in Britain, it's like I should be speaking Welsh right now. I should know my ludicrous last name, but we don't know it. We were given it. So my family in itself's like a lesson to history. Like, look what happened when other white people come here. They fucked up the ancient Britain. So
fucking Anglos, the eternal Anglo.
Yeah.
I think you're better off.
But Rick, you're a white person and you enslaved all the earth, and you never were a slave ever. Okay, never.
Yeah, Welsh people were never
like
oppressed by English or something like that.
You're like a black guy who's been adopted by whites, right? Taught how to speak properly instead of all that fucking Ebonic shit, right? Like you're the fucking British equivalent of that.
Yeah, I'm like the talented 10th. but again, though, it makes the point though, like if that happened to my family and like the other Welsh and Brythonic people, then this could happen again. Like saying, even the Anglo-Saxon language, they could be replaced by Islam. And then Anglos with 6 Islamic markers. Like I've got 6 Anglo markers in my damn line. So you know what I mean? It's happened to us all.
It's like I mean, if we weren't fucking white, like if we weren't considered this fucking abstract whiteness, like we would constantly be able to bring up shit that happened in fucking history that we don't even really talk about, except for in history. We don't
even care about it. Like that's a problem. Like I mean, that's I mean, it's not a problem. It's like everyone else's problem is they fucking pretend to care about it. They don't really.
Yeah, well, look at, if I fucking walked around constantly with this idea of like, fucking British people, man, they fucking genocided my people. I deserve things. I'm a victim.
give me Gibbs.
I'm a victim. Like, it's such a fucking bullshit tactic. Like, you don't think to do that.
There's no fucking honor in it. It's dumb and it's old history. Why would you bring it back up? The only reason they bring it up is so that they can get more Gibbs. They don't really give a shit besides that.
Well, and it's because you recognize you can get yourself further ahead by lifting yourself up from your own bootstraps than you can by getting Gibbs.
So wait a minute.
Wait, Rick, I got to speak first because your fucking British fucking ancestors oppressed my Australian fucking ancestors, sent us all here to this shit fucking country. So I get the privilege of speaking first, right? Because I've been fucking oppressed. Fucking Nazi.
I'll send you some reparations.
We was convicts.
Then you find us teased now, sir.
See, we didn't even hold that against you. We just just fucking got together, fucking put a cricket team together and went back and kicked your ass.
Yeah, then kept the ashes.
I've got a lot of friends who are white and into social justice, and I spend a great deal of time like A, trying to red pill them, and B, trying to understand what the fuck's going on in their minds. And I've talked to them about all this white privilege bullshit, and I was like, okay, so and they think we should pay reparations, and I said, okay, so why don't we ask the Norwegians and the Vikings and the Romans, the Italians, to pay reparations to us? And they say that like it's because our culture now is supposedly profiting from like all the injustice that we did. So like, yeah, it's fucking retarded.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so
Such terrible injustice the English did when they abolished slavery over the third of the world.
This is the best way to take it. This is the best way to like fuck with your friends. Is like, okay, I understand what you're saying. Yep, I understand what you're saying. And you say, all right, well then we have to tear down world Jewry because they're 2% of the population, but take up like 93% of the 1% of the richest people in the world. So, we have to take care of them first before we get to us.
And we have to get rid of Asian privilege.
I just see
Asian privilege.
They probably call you anti-Semitic though. So
yeah, or racist.
A lot of the far leftists are actually pretty anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
In Britain, I know. Yeah.
Well,
it's because they're quoting the Palestinians and all that business and the fundamentalist Muslims.
Well, the main reason why white people can't pull this off, right? Why we can't say that we're oppressed because of history is because the only fucking people would ever work on are other white people. It's the only people would ever that would go, oh wow, because of historical injustice, we owe you shit. No other fucking race of people would fall for some shit like that. And
that's really right.
And that's my main criticism, my main fucking problem with white people is this goddamn idea of like altruism to the outgroup, and like universal fairness to everyone despite cost, because we have this high ideal of fairness and we don't even need to consider the cost of it. We just need to do it because it's what's morally correct.
I guess the question with that, has that always been in existence with us, or is that something that's been ingrained in us?
That's a new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's what we are now.
And it's gotten so bad I'm surprised we haven't paid England back for the tea we dumped out in Boston.
Now you mention it, if the more recent violations sort of matter more than the fucking historical ones, like further back on history, I want Rick to take fucking like 20 pounds out of his wallet right now and send it to me for fucking that bodyline bowling in fucking like 1933, fucking English cricket team, you motherfuckers.
You'll have to send your Bitcoin address. I'll wire you through some reparations.
Yeah, I demand reparations now.
Hashtag we stand with the convicts. Yeah.
Do Korean people, do they like talk about how the Japanese owe them stuff or?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like we're pretty bitter about the Japanese. So like I would say the average Korean person, has some degree of resentment towards the Japs.
Yeah, but do they go for Gibbs? Do they go for Gibbs?
To some degree, yeah, like especially if you look into the comfort women reparations, you don't see that word being used, but that's basically like what the comfort women victims, that's supposedly what they want. And then Japan did give like a bunch of money to the South Korean government, and I forget exactly how it was distributed. A lot of people were still pissed though. They didn't think of it as like a real apology. It's like Japan didn't really admit like their war crimes. And honestly, did you
guys get like a version of the rape of Nanking up there or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we basically like the rape of women. There's this narrative, and I don't know exactly how much of it is true, and I would probably get like a lot of nasty looks from Korean people for even questioning it. But like I have to be able to question everything.
6 grillion.
Supposedly, yeah. Most 6 grillion comfort women, basically. Basically, the idea is that during, Japanese occupation, they kidnapped some number of, Korean women. Like they said that they were going to give them like nice jobs or something like that. And then basically they just took Korean women and like lots of women supposedly under Japanese occupation around Asia. and just like force them to be prostitutes. Japanese revisionists will counter that by saying no, like a bunch of these women were like volunteered to do it, or like, you know, during wartime, like the women, like, you know, the nature of women is to sleep with like the superior, you know, conquering men, that kind of thing. And like, as much as I hate to admit that or entertain that perspective, I can see the argument.
Our dick is so big. There is no reason they would not want. They saw a big dick. I mean, come on, Koreans. Like, we did not rape your women. They all like our dick. You see? Yeah, that's not really a good apology.
Yeah, it's not a good apology, man. But the thing is, like, I hate to side with the Japs, but you know, I just have to play the devil's advocate. Like, what if a lot of this, like, if we question the Western theater,
yes,
like the Holocaust and say German war crimes and Muslims grilling Jews, if we question that narrative, we also have to question what happened in Asia, what happened with Japan, like how much of what they did was like actually helpful, like how much infrastructure did they actually build, like how did the soldiers interact with the civilian populace, how much of like the
same way all soldiers interact with all civilian populations.
Huh?
Well, it's a pretty standard operating procedure, is what I'm saying. Like, in a war zone, shit like that happens, right? And you can imagine people blowing it out of a fucking proportion because it happened more in their fucking particular area or something like that.
Yeah, it's like, so, you know, it's hard to know what really happened under the Fog War. So people will say like, oh, Japan did such terrible war crimes, but I think there's more nuance to it than that. And either way, like, I don't, even if all that shit was true, there's other stuff to consider. Like, I don't think the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor unprovoked. And for me saying that as a Korean, like Korean people would get upset if I mentioned that.
Yeah, like Hirohito did nothing wrong is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, that's basically what I would be saying. But I mean, it's not that I necessarily believe that, but I think there's a lot more nuance to it than, you know, people just want to see things black and white, and I want to go above that. But aside from like the Japanese reparations, what I really want is like ZOG, US, UN reparations.
Yeah,
Because
most
they
people
really
see it
matter.
black and white, and you're like, hey, you know, in between that, there's some shades of yellow.
Yeah, but what you're
shades of yarrow.
I mean, are you going to talk about like the Korean War now? Because like certainly like I've questioned it, you know, because I'm thinking about it's like the first fucking UN type war in the U.S. We didn't officially like declare war. It's, you know, even from just looking at it big picture, it seems fucking sketch.
Yeah,
it seems like Zog, you know, part of the Zog machine.
I read this book a couple of years ago called None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen, and it just like kind of introduced me to the names of the big banker families, like the Rothschild and, you know, Paul Warburg, Jacob Schiff, and the people like that who like moved around, who, you know, moved lots of money around and basically, you know, funded the Marxist Bolshevist revolution. Like, it's interesting because the author doesn't deny the Holocaust, or he thinks the Holocaust happened, and he says that like there are lots of people who say that who will blame the Jews, but it doesn't make sense because because he thinks like the Rothschild, or like the insiders, he calls them, like funded Hitler, and so actually they're responsible for the deaths of their own people if they are Jews, so that Jewish thing doesn't work out. But I don't believe that. Anyways, that's what kind of got me into this whole like alternative conspiratorial view of history. And so I looked at the evidence for for how like World War I was kind of set up, and how like America got into First World War based on like this flimsy pretext of the Lusitania. You can look this up. And then World War II is just like, oh, Pearl Harbor wasn't you know, it wasn't what it was made out to be. Like the White House wanted Japan to attack. It was ideal that Japan would attack first, and then, you know, Roosevelt could go with this whole Day of Infamy thing and then get into the war and conveniently save the Jews from.
Well, we had placed tariffs, and basically we're starving their resources, and that sort of contributed to their like rapid, like, we have to get resources at all cost. I mean, type of mentality. And they figured, okay, well, if war is inevitable, then we'll strike first, and if we strike hard enough, then maybe they'll not want to fight. They'll basically let us have a lot of the Pacifics.
So they just wanted to stay home, be peaceful, and you Americans forced them to fucking like attack you.
Well,
It's
before,
like, I think
before we got in
I think from
with our actual soldiers on the ground, we were giving aid to Britain and to the communists. We were already picking sides. We had already aligned ourselves.
Yeah, basically.
Sure.
So, I'm sorry. Go on.
Not true enough.
So, like, recently I started questioning this. Like, earlier this year, I looked into, like, the Korean War. I was like, okay, like, how much of this is bullshit? And I realized now it's, like, all bullshit, because the entire purpose of the Korean War, and I can share links or whatever, was to, like, establish the credibility of the United Nations as, like, a collective security force. And when you really think about it, like, most of it was America, with, like, like, America was like, what, 80% of the military, and then the other 20% were literally just like token amounts of military from like other nations. It's like really convenient. Basically, like Stalin and Truman, like, they talked with each other at the Tehran and Yalta conferences in 1945, 1947, sometime around there before the war, and Truman was it? Yo, sorry, yeah, it was. I think it was with. Just give me a second, guys. I'm gonna pull this up real quick. Let's see. Yeah, Roosevelt. Okay, so here's the article. Yeah, basically that's like what we've been taught since we were kids, like even in America, but that's obviously not what happened. It's like, Zog US, fuck yeah. At the Big Three conferences at Tehran and Yalta, President Roosevelt asked Stalin if he would break his treaty with Japan and enter the Pacific War. Stalin agreed on condition that the United States supply him with all the weapons, vehicles, and materiel his Far Eastern Army would need for the expedition. Roosevelt agreed, and some 600 shiploads of supplies were sent to Russia to equip Stalin's army to fight Japan. This was an absurd foreign policy decision. Stalin was a well-known aggressor. The 1939 invasion of Poland, which officially began World War II, had actually been a joint venture by the Germans and Soviets. In 1940, Stalin had invaded Finland, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, and annexed part of Romania. This is 1940. No one could seriously believe he would bring benevolence to Asia. Stalin did not send his army into the Far East until 5 days before the war ended. Japan, already struck by the atomic bomb, was ready to surrender. Soviet forces moved into China, where, after very limited fighting, they accepted the surrender of huge Japanese weapons depots. Then they turned these weapons, plus their own American Lend-Lease supplies, over to communist rebel Mao Zedong. Thus, armed, the Chinese communists ultimately overthrew the nationalist government. So, what did the Soviets do to win the Pacific War? Like, people could argue that actually it hastened the surrender of Japan. There might be some validity to that, but the way I look at it, it's like, why give up? Like, if you're really this truly benevolent, liberator, you might as well have just given Korea over to Korean people. You mean, instead of like making this artificial border. And so, sorry guys, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so Truman, declared in 1950, we are not at war. This is a police action, right? So Truman completely bypassed Congress, right? That's all fucked up on all levels. You guys understand that. And and like when MacArthur pushed the North Koreans all the way back to the Yalu River, he basically almost unified Korea. Like, he basically won the war. But then when he was retreating because the communist troops were coming, he ordered the bridges at the Yalu River, which is basically the border to China, North Korea. He ordered the bridges to be blown up, but then he was told to what is it called? Delay that order. Yeah, MacArthur ordered the Yalos bridges to be bombed to keep the Chinese out, but within hours, his order was countermanded by the Secretary of Defense, General George Marshall. General MacArthur said of Marshall's order to leave the Yalo bridges alone, which cost thousands of DIs their lives, I realized for the first time that I had actually been denied the use of my full military power to safeguard the lives of my soldiers and the safety of my army. To me, it clearly foreshadowed a future tragic situation in Korea and left me with a sense of inexpressible shock. MacArthur was soon dismissed from command in Korea. Like Patton, he was expendable once he had served his purposes. So there's a very small percentage of like Korean people who have this idea that actually this war was all bullshit. Like, it's like, imagine if you hire an arsonist to go set someone's house on fire, and then later you send like firemen to rescue people from that house, and then you look like the big hero, right? But not just the hero, you're like part of this organization called the United Nations. And does anyone here like the United Nations? Do you guys think like it's really like this, viable organization that's all about
Certainly
the
not.
welfare of humanity?
Oh God, it's such an important organization. It's so good.
Yeah, so like I'm just trying to, when I first learned about this, like as a Korean person, this war affected me, my family. My grandfather had to, move down to Seoul, like with his family, with all the most valuable possessions they carried. They lived in the northwestern part of North Korea, and they own like property, like huge mountains and shit. Niggas, I could be like rolling in it right now. If Korea like wasn't divided, like I could be fucking, like my family would be like fucking rich. Like we would be like these, I don't know, I could be like one of these kids.
He was.
Like, driving a super Ferrari around at like
Your
2
family
a.m.
was rich and shit.
Yeah,
No,
we was rich
no,
and shit.
come on, we would never allow that.
Yeah, we was aristocracy and shit is basically what I'm saying. Like within my own personal narrative of my family.
Yeah, but you see, we're all just people, and like different than Muslims and stuff. So like it doesn't matter like Korean, Chinese, Japanese, globalist, Jewish. It's all the same.
Yeah. You know what's really convenient? I had an argument with this guy on Facebook.
Wait a minute. You're not white. Never mind. You're a poor victim. We're sorry.
Well, I'm a poor oppressed POC, but guess
Wait a
what,
minute.
guys?
Wait a minute. No, it was the United Nations. No, never mind. You're not. Oh shit. I don't know what to do.
Alex, it's about the midpoint, so if you want to.
Yeah, go ahead, faggot. Fuck you, Zach.
Wait, what?
I said go ahead.
Okay.
Make your point. Called Zach a faggot.
So now it's just like, now it's like people will use this. Well, if it wasn't for the United States, you wouldn't be here. So you should fall on your knees and like in gratitude and all this shit. And like that's what we do. But like South Koreans, like we're really cucked. The North Koreans, they see the U.S. as imperialist, and they see the South Korean government as like a puppet of the U.S., which it was. Both governments did really terrible things to each other, and the U.S. military, the U.S.-led bombing runs wiped out like 30% of like the North Korean population during the war, and 3 million out of 30 million Koreans, like 1 out of 10 Korean people died during the war. So Zog US, right? The White House is like responsible for like the division. They colluded with the Soviets to make this war happen. And what else was I gonna say? Sorry guys, my coffee is still trying to kick in.
Do all your reparations though. That's the main point.
Yeah, reparations. So it's just like no, we don't demand reparations because we're propagandizers. Believing the U.S. were like our big saviors. We wouldn't be here without them, which I believed most of my life. And it's not like I wanted to stop believing that. Like I've met U.S. soldiers. I went to the Korean War Memorial in D.C. And I met some Korean War veterans, and I actually shook their hands, guys. I said, thank you for fighting the communists, right? And that sounded cool to me at the time because I was just like, fuck communism. But now I'm just like, wow, like this, like all these good old American boys, they were sent to die on the other side of a planet to serve the agenda of fucking world oligarchs. So now people are saying, like, okay, well, Korea needs to become diverse, you know, and the United Nations, they recently put out their press release about like replacement migration. Korea has a very low birth rate. So, like in a couple of decades, it could be that Korean children are the minority in their own classroom. You cannot get away from this Zog globalist world domination, guys. It's like elites all over the world in developed nations. They just cling to elites. Irish elites hang out with Anglo elites, hang out with American elites, and they turn their backs on their own people. And you don't want to be, to betray your own people, to have to engage in, to join the exclusive privileged club of other globalist elites. It doesn't sound good. So what they say is like, oh, we're universalists. We're about all of humanity. So that's how they regain their sense of moral legitimacy. But it's all like deception and propaganda.
Well, a lot of it, some of these people certainly, in the United Nations for certain, like, yeah, if you mix everybody up and everybody's just a mixture or hodgepodge that lives in this internationalist, one market, not one race, but, we're all just a mixture, we're all Mongolized, all the countries are full of all the other people, then why do you need these borders? Why do you need these different nations? Why don't you just have one government? Why don't we have a worldwide democracy? And then like worldwide neoliberalism? Why don't we institute that?
Because if you didn't have borders, there'd be Scots and Welsh people running amok. It'd be anarchy.
Yeah, that's essentially the view. So like certainly they want to do this to Asia. They would want to do this everywhere. We'll mix all the peoples together, and then it'll be great. Then we won't need all this, nationalism. We won't need all this stuff.
And then we'll all have one TV show and one source of media. We'll all get food from the same company, and we'll all hold hands.
And yet there are Democrats in California who want to secede, but they can't understand why the world would have borders and cultures and different shit.
Well, we're up at about the halfway point. So, is there anyone even watching the chat?
I don't know. I'm not watching the chat.
Oh, hold on. Let me pull it.
Neither am I.
Well,
we're not even watching our own chat.
Sorry, Spurgs. We've all been on the iPhone tonight, so we can't read the glorious Spurg chat.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're allowed to chat with it. I'm not going to sit there and watch the chat. I mean, God forbid. Some of those
someone might
guys
say something offensive.
Someone might.
Well, yeah.
So
this irregulars, is it banned from live streaming right now or what?
Yeah. It'll be on the second chat. The
sneaky.
Didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Oh shit!
At this point, that I thoroughly endorse rape campuses.
Here.
Where do I find this bird chat?
So, you guys, Donald Trump unveiled his plans today. He's going to set up new restrictions on Cuba, undoing what President Obama had done. He basically was saying, like, I'm canceling Obama's one-sided deal with Cuba, and kind of citing that Cuba's not free, and that allowing people to go over there and allowing companies to make deals with the Cuban government, but not actually reform their markets, not actually renounce communism, and do business with them wasn't something that we should engage in, and that he's going to go about undoing it.
It's only
someone tell Michael Moore so he can get over there before they close the fucking border.
It's only because it's that close to America, though, that it's the shame of it. So, for instance, the American government will routinely deal with, like, Saudi Arabia, that's like an oppressive regime. They'll deal with, like, Kazakhstan and other places. But, obviously, because Cuba's very, very close, there's a lot of scrutiny on it. So, but it does make sense, though. They can't be free unless... You can't be free unless they're free. So...
Well,
it's basically the same problem with North Korea and China, right? Like, they don't want that fucking... They don't want the Americans on their fucking doorstep.
Yeah, well, it's not even that really, because I mean, like, they're not free, but we're well, I was gonna say we're free, but yeah, it's just I think that it's a decent policy, right? Like, so there's basically two arguments. There's one that's like we should open up trade with them, and then that'll force them to be more free market oriented, and this and that. And the other argument is you don't really want to do business with communists. You don't want communists to benefit from your productivity, your ingenuity. Fuck them. We won't do business with you if you're a communist.
I disagree with that. I mean, this is where libertarians are totally right. Everyone benefits from trade, right?
But
so ideally, if you could trade with everyone, ideally you would. Like, no matter what pricks they are.
Yeah, okay, but are you willing to say, because basically, like, the communist government runs the economy over there, right? Like, they're not really benefiting the people, right? So, like, basically what you're going to turn them into right now is they make a deal with an American company and then use their slave labor, treat their people like a giant.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Say you trade, like, say you go into a store and you buy something off the fucking guy who owns it, and he goes home and beats his wife. You can't fucking solve all the world's problems, right? You can't say, well, I'm not going to deal with anyone who fucking does shit that I fucking disagree with. I mean, you don't have to bake gay wedding cakes and stuff, but, like, if this guy gets supplied, his store gets supplied with a product from a guy who beats his wife. He doesn't beat his wife, but he gets supplied. It gets fucking ridiculous. It's like the iPencil thing,
but
in
do we
reverse,
allow
right? Trying not to benefit anyone else. It just fucking waste of time.
Do we allow our tech
Help
industry
those
to
countries.
set up the North Korean? Do we let them benefit from what we've built?
Like, instead of giving them
They
fucking
just
aid
start
and
looking
stuff
for
like that,
it.
yeah. At least they're producing something, right?
Yeah, but what I don't want is for North Korea to become another like McDonald's, Starbucks, consumer capitalist shithole, where like no one gives a shit about each other, and it's all about like the next big thing, the next iPhone is like close,
next fidget spinner.
Yeah. It's like North Korea is the last bastion of traditionalism in Asia that hasn't fallen to like the globalist world order. That's why they're pissed. They don't really care about like oppression.
What about like Laos?
United Nations.
What about like Laos?
What about Laos?
Are they? I don't feel like they're in that position. Aren't they pretty ethnically homogenous as well?
Oh yeah. Like Laos is definitely very ethnically homogenous so far.
Vietnam is as well, isn't it? And they've not
Vietnam?
been invaded. Yeah, Vietnam. Apparently, what were I reading up? Apparently, they've resisted invasion for 2,000 years. They did it with the Americans as well, didn't they?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, you go there. Yeah, there are foreigners. Of course, you'll find foreigners, but so far it's pretty ethnically homogenous. Well, I've been to Saigon, and yeah, most people there are Vietnamese, and it's pretty cool. I hope it stays that way. I hope the Vietnamese prosper, and that they have a future for Vietnamese children.
Isn't Japan like the shining example of perfectly like culturally homogenous society?
I think it's a great example. I've been there. It's pretty
culturally.
Yeah, they've got low crime, haven't they? And culturally, like, you don't see that level of violent crime that you get over here with all the nog.
I think they do have a lot of foreigners per capita, though, compared to other Asian countries. But they do.
They have a very strict immigration policy. They only take in people that they need, kind of like Australia, like the point system for jobs.
Well,
that is how it is now, but they are pushing for immigration, right? There are liberals and elites in both South Korea and Japan that are pushing for more immigration over the next couple of decades, and I can see it happening, and it kind of blows my mind.
One of the main arguments that they use is like low birth rate, and I think that's quite an interesting thing because
in order to compete in the global world market, then we need people to do these jobs that say Korean kids won't do, or something like that.
We need to bring in the white man to scrub the toilets and do it. It's like, no, but the white man will rape people. The white man is dangerous.
Yeah, it's not the white man.
Crime rates, and it wouldn't be wrong. It wouldn't be wrong. Statistics.
It'd be people from
the white men need comfort women.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it would be like people from like Southeast Asia more like than.
Oh, okay.
Oh God! So like people espousing like if you're an engineer, you can instead of eating the dog, you can fuck the dog or something.
Yeah, you can fuck the dog before you eat it if you're an engineer.
Yeah, the thing is like I like there could be an argument made that South Korea would be better off economically because of this GDP gap between say South Korea and other Southeast Asian nations. it'll benefit the people who come here as migrant workers, and also it'll benefit like South Korea economically to compete with the world market, because we need a more population to sustain like our economic output, because
Well,
if we just not have enough Korean children, then like it's gonna fuck up. Then in like 20, 30 years, like the economic output will be like so low that we'll be worse off. So
why
that's
don't you guys
interesting.
start factory farming them?
Factory farming Korean babies, like
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want. Fuck.
Yeah, see, like this is where you know that the fuckers don't actually have a long-term fucking plan. At best, they're just fucking people playing the democratic games. Of course, they're not thinking long-term. They're not thinking about the stability of the people, right? Like you go, okay, we're not producing enough people. Well, first of all, that presumes that you need constant growth, which is a fucking sign of like this neoliberal fucking federal central banking world shit, where you need constant growth to sustain it, because we're never supposed to have economic stability. We're supposed to always grow. We're supposed to always forever be that. It's fucking retarded. But yeah, they're not looking like the idea that, okay, Japanese people, our birth rate isn't high enough. So what we'll do is we'll bring in other people. Well, you know what you haven't done? You haven't increased the Japanese birth rate.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this thing about like say real estate, like space, right? That's one big reason that people aren't having children, is because they need a certain amount of space. And supposedly like the migrant workers, they don't mind if they have like 5 families in like a small apartment. I mean, 5 family members like cramped in a small apartment. Whereas us developed privileged Koreans will not tolerate such living conditions. But that's why it's okay if we have these migrant workers, because they'll take up less space.
I wonder how they reconcile that their stated agenda is to reduce the world population, but whenever a region becomes depopulated, they push people into it. It really doesn't make sense.
Even if it is true, like it all works out economically, and the migrant workers get what they want, and Korea is like still very like, I don't know, it's like competing in the world economy. What happens like when all these people start like race mixing and stuff, and like these people come here as new Koreans, they're these Hapas, right? Hapas, or people who are just living in Korea for 5 years. Oh, you're a Korean now. Okay.
The tan Korean.
South Korean law dictates what a Korean person is. So, I guess North Korean people aren't Korean, because they don't subscribe to this globalist order of like, you can just take on a national identity like a t-shirt. They're just interchangeable. And of course, South Koreans aren't helping themselves. Like people like my family, right? We basically abandoned, our fatherland to go to America to find a better opportunity. And we did get better opportunities. And now we're back in South Korea because we have other work opportunities, my people in my family specifically. But we South Koreans, like, they want to get out of South Korea because it's kind of like hell. We call it Hell Joseon, which Joseon is the name of like our old kingdom. And it's like life is hard. Like people study here all the time, and like it's hard to get a good job, that kind of thing. And same is true for like China and Japan. Like there's a lot of pressure on the youth to find a good job and all that stuff. So they want to get out to like white countries, that are more developed, is where they think they have better opportunities. So there's not this sense of like pride, right? It's all about like, what can you get for yourself? You can move to Canada and become a Canadian, right? And so as South Korea has developed kind of on par with like Western developed nations, then other, because Korea used to be like, very poor and third world. Now other developing countries are coming to Korea and doing the same shit that we have been pulling off, going to white countries and adopting those national identities. I guess in a roundabout way, this is kind of what we deserve. Because we've been perpetuating, we've been saying it's okay to like forsake our own ethnic identity in favor of more gives me that's, in a sense, like in a favor of going to another country. And it's not like we're not working for it. We definitely work for it. We definitely make money and we earn it.
Being from Southern California, I'd say having Koreans move to your area is not commensurate at all to having other minorities move in. Like I didn't mind having a cheap Korean grocery store near me. I mean, I'm not Korean, but it's kind of convenient.
Did the crime rate go up massively when that happened?
When the Koreans moved in, oh yeah,
Yeah.
they're vicious.
Oh yeah,
The only cost.
we rape all y'all white women. It's true.
With your big
Where
dicks.
them white women at? Where
Well,
them
no,
white
I mean you're not Japanese, and we're not Korean, so of course that's not happening. But
They turn all our children into kimchi.
yeah, the only problem that they really impose is like the race mixing thing, which as long as they don't do that, they're really not imposing a cost. And like even if I got exactly what I wanted, right? Like you can have people come there and work. The problem becomes when you're just like, well, the only identity I have is the particular nation, this particular nation with these particular borders and the government that's above it. Nothing else matters, and it doesn't matter if you're born here. There's no ethnicity tied to the land, and rationally, like I can kind of agree to that to a degree that there isn't. It's just dirt. There's nothing magic about it. But once you untie that, then one, you're going to give more power to the state because no longer are you a people, right? And the state can commit treason to your people. You're just people under this government. So it doesn't matter. There's no identity tied to it. There's no idea of who are the people that the government is supposed to serve. There's nothing above you being a citizen of this state.
Exactly.
They're using a finite resource. They're using cultural capital and converting it into economic capital because it takes moral systems and norms to become a good economic producer in the first place.
But think of all those tacos. I mean, come on, don't you like tacos?
And that's I don't doubt that they're making the same arguments. Like, don't you like more kebabs in Seoul? Don't you want more diversity? Anyways, it's like, this is
Don't you like more nail bombs and rape?
Huh? What's that? Oh yeah, and rape. Yes. Oh, so far it's not that bad. Here's the thing, guys. Like, I don't mind if there are minorities in like a mostly homogenous state. I'd like to think that, say, Koreans in America could stay in America, right? Because I can't deny that like I have some degree of loyalty. So I would hope that if Korean Americans just stop voting left or take away their citizenship, like I take away their voting rights or whatever, just give them like a little piece of land, and maybe we could have some kind of mutual trade. I think that would be great. I don't know if that makes sense, but so I don't have problems with minorities being in South Korea. They just have to stay a minority. They have to know their place. And people fucking get triggered and flip out if I say this, but it just makes sense to me. It's like, no, it's like the minorities, they benefit from being here, and using the infrastructure that our people have built, right? And it's the same if we go to another country. They don't have some intrinsic right to be here, right? This is our sovereign homeland.
There's a certain level of respect with it too. When you're a guest in someone's home, you show them the respect.
You wash the dishes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Eric, you got anything to say?
Relating to the guest thing, Indo-Europeans, the Aryans had a very strict, and all Indo-European societies tend to, had a very strict, moral system regarding you have to treat people with hospitality. I think that should go with nations. Like, you have to be sociable and accept guests and treat them well. But then when that becomes, there's no distinction between the guest and the host, that's a problem.
Well, like America, we tried to send our, I believe, what was it, like the late, I don't remember. It was like 18 something. We sent some people there to Korea, and they killed us. That wasn't very nice.
Would the solution to all this be, though, is, I know it's a bit of a basic bitch answer, but restrict voting rights. So let's say you have a load of migrant workers in your country. Why the fuck do they give them voting rights after 4 years?
Yeah, they shouldn't be citizens, right? This is, I believe Japan does that. Like, if you were to go there, right, and you were to work or whatever, like, you could even have a family and kids, but like your kids would not be citizens. You would not be a true citizen of Japan.
Yeah, because there's a considerable Japanese Korean population that lives in Japan, right? I meet these people from time to time. It's really interesting. They grow up in Japan. Their Korean has a Japanese accent to it. and Japanese is like their first language. So a Korean person who lives in Japan, speaks the language, like, you know, is immersed in Japanese culture, goes to school, speaks to his own Korean parents in Japanese, will never become a Japanese citizen. Like, they will have a South Korean or North Korean passport. There's also a North Korean population in Japan, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Presumably exiles and stuff like that.
I don't know, maybe. But it's, yeah, Japan. Oh wait, I wanna get back. Wait, who said something about like American people going to Korea?
Yeah. We sent some nice army men. Like, what was it, like a 1870 or something?
Exactly. And guess what? Yeah, and like they tried to forcibly enter Korea, and Korean people are like, no thanks, we're not interested at all, please go away. And you know, and there's like cultural and language barriers at the time, so and it ended up with people dying. So, but you know, you gotta trade with us, right? And guess what? There's one guy named Ernst Oppert. He was a German merchant, echo, who wanted to trade opium with South Korea. Well, Korea. And so he really was eager to like get trade with Korea after the whole opium trade in China was booming, also run by certain merchants, echo, who worked with the British imperialists, with, you know, European imperialists to like flood China, to you know, enforce the right to with drugs and, you know, like destroy a people.
There's always a buyer going.
Yeah. So Ernst Oppert tried to steal the remains, like the bones of a local Korean governor at the time, in order to like keep it as ransom, so they could sign a treaty to open it up to trade and shit like that. And so so it's like, yeah, it's like ever since the beginning, like fucking Jews and imperialists, you know, have been like fucking up our shit. And it's like the Jews, man. The Jews were there from the beginning, from the first like Western imperialist incursion into Korea. Like, can you guys believe this shit?
Well, yeah, I can. In it, I think what was his name? The fellow that went to North Korea that was Jewish and said everybody treated him different. Michael Malice. Yeah.
Michael Malice. Yeah.
He said like North Korean people are very very anti-Semitic. When I told people I was Jewish, they looked at me weird.
It's my big nose.
I've tweeted at that guy. I've tweeted some angry tweets at that guy. You know,
is this the guy who wrote the book about Kim Jong-un?
Yes.
Sorry, what? Yeah. Yeah, he was on the Tom Woods show and had a talk with like Stefan Molyneux, and this guy's like, yeah, I'm all for like freeing the people of North Korea. I'm like, you motherfucker, you don't live in Seoul like I do. You're not Korean blood. You don't live in this land. If a war were to break out, you know, you wouldn't lose anything. You have no skin in the game, right? So like I said like these 2 comments, and I tweeted at him like, you have no skin in this game. Like, leave us.
You don't have a
alone.
lampshade in the game.
It really pissed me off because
and he's a Jew from Brooklyn.
I've liked some of his other arguments, but yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm an ANCAP, I'm an anarchist. Oh, I went to North Korea. Oh, look at how bad North Korea is. I guess I would support like state action. Like we have to free all these people from these like concentration camps that are in North Korea. It's like,
It's like, is it something in his blood? Is it something in his DNA to want to start wars amongst like other nations, using the fucking white Gentiles to fucking quote unquote liberate North Korea under all this like Jewish like propaganda and kikery? Is it in their blood? It's really blew my mind, because I didn't know he was a Jew at first. I just started, there's something in it where I was just like, well, fuck this guy. He's like white or something, you know. He doesn't, you know, what does he care? It's like, no, leave North Korea alone. Like, don't trigger war. Don't let that, like, why take that risk? It's not necessary. And then the gears in my mind, my gook mongoloid mind started turning. I'm like, wait a second. Ooh. And sure enough, he was a fucking kike.
Can't escape mongoloid logic, man.
Yeah, Mongoloid logic. Oh baby.
You know, I don't know.
My 117 IQ.
When are we gonna make white and yellow ethno state?
Segregated by a big, beautiful, powerful wall.
Yeah, I can think of no people I would rather build a wall with than the ones who built the Great Wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then that's the Chinese, and you don't want them. You don't want them.
Yeah, you don't want
Like
the Chinese.
Jews. Chinese people are kind of like Jews in that respect because they do see themselves as like the center of the world, and they are like Chinese investors because China's blowing up. You have these fucking rich Chinese elites. They are buying up land in New Zealand and Australia, all over the world. They'll buy land in Japan. They'll buy buildings in South Korea. It's a problem. Like one billionaire dude, I forget if it was like in Australia or something, but he basically bought land for like a Chinese embassy. You know, he just gave it to the government.
Well, they're doing that in Africa at the moment, though. They're going around buying up all the resources and land rights, and the world media isn't making any fuss about it. Yet, if one of our countries to do anything, oh my god,
colonialism.
There's also a lot of gooks.com going on in Africa. It seems a lot
gooks.com. What do you mean?
Well, I'm making fun of like blacked.com, right? Like they're fucking having sex with a lot of the women there.
I see.
And marrying because like there's a benefit. What was it? There's like a benefit because if they in a lot of those countries, if they marry a native woman, then they have like they're in a better position for trade. I believe they can like stay there longer or something. Basically like get citizenship. And so what they're doing is, of course, these wealthy fucking Chinese men are going there like, okay, well, I'll marry me an African woman.
Have you seen in South Africa, though, the rules, though? Apparently, Oriental people are classed as black. You know what I mean? You know, in South Africa, you've got white and then you've got other. Well, apparently, like, the Oriental folk are grouped into the other and they're a bit pissed off. They're like, we're not black.
Chinese people hate black people.
Yeah. Chinese fucking chinks. I mean, they're like our next door neighbor, and they've got like all these nukes pointed at like North Korea. But it's
better be careful. One might miss and go a little astray.
Yeah.
Oh, we are so sorry. We blew up your factories that compete with our stuff. That was a total mistake during the war. We're totally sorry.
I mean, I generally like the Chinese, and like I
no more Kia.
But you know, like Korea or China's got a fucking billion people, right? South Korea has got like 50 million. The population of South Korea is 50 million, but there's a bunch of fucking foreigners, dirty foreigners included in that. So it's actually more like 45 million, like 47 million, like South Korean people. And then North Korea's got like 25 million Korean people. So that's like, about 75 or 70 like million Korean people on the peninsula. That's less than 1% of the world population. China's got 1 billion. Japan's got like 125 million or something like that, right? We're a minority in Asia, for fuck's sake. And so
yeah, but y'all look.
Yeah, we look similar, but like, you know, we're a distinct people with a distinct language and culture. And like, so like we have to be tribalistic if we want to compete with like these other tribes around us, right? But of course, and also Zog globalism is kind of taking that away as well.
Speaking of minority, like Asian groups, I always wondered what happened to the God, was it the they're named after like the mustache style. That's like they're like a minority in China, and they used to
Manchus?
The Manchus, yeah. Like, didn't they had their own dynasty and stuff? Are they like even around? Or like, what's you never hear about them ever.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm still looking into that myself because like yeah, they were like because Manchuria, right, like north of Korea, you know, there's a lot of history there, but me myself, yeah, I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with the history, so I gotta look into it.
Well, Eric, your opening statement, you wanted to discuss something?
Oh yeah, just a lot of you have libertarian views, and I have some questions, I guess, about them, like the idea that you should have free trade, but the Adam Smith notion, free trade shouldn't be restricted. People should be allowed to. But if you have a toxic culture, one that has ideological, an ideological grudge against you in the first place, it behooves them to weaken your cultural foundations. I mean, it's just, should you just let the merchants in and let them have their way with you, or do you have some standards and say, actually, no, we want to deal with these people and not just everyone indiscriminately?
Well, there's two aspects to that, right? So there's immigration, right? So a lot of the the more like, I'm a hardcore Libertarian Party member, man. Yeah, they want like open immigration. There's also the difference that I would definitely be very, very restrictive of certain groups coming in the country. That's what I advocate for. And as far as trade, like, I see no problem with free trade so long as the other country is not just manipulate like what China does, where they just manipulate their economy to all hell and back, and basically a lot of their wealth is just central bank nonsense. It's not based on actual productivity, and like there might be a militaristic or strategic reason not to trade with a country.
Like, sanctions seem to be very effective. They've kept Russia in a recession for a decade.
The libertarian borders thing, basically a lot of those guys that say open borders, they just say, well, it's statist, right? Which, it's like, okay, well, they advocate this, but they won't advocate getting rid of the welfare state that enables them to keep going and stuff like that. And it's right, like, yeah, maybe you could make the argument that if you got rid of the state, quote unquote, and the welfare state, that you could have open borders. Everybody would have their own private property, so there'd still be borders, right? But like, people could buy and land by their own.
Right. So one of the foundational principles is freedom of association, and so we're actually forced out of that principle under the current where in a more libertarian thing, you would be free to not associate with anybody you didn't agree with, and that could be all other racial groups, that could be whatever lines you want. But there would actually be much less freedom of movement without the incentives that the state gives people, and without the forced association that the state imposes. Now we all have similar ideas in here, but we're not all in total agreement. I mean, like, I would take National Socialism over the current system we have now, which is destroying us. But I would also like to see some freer economic principles at work. But as far as an ethno-state type situation, we would have more of an ethno-state if we weren't being forced to assimilate all these other groups.
Yeah. Yeah, they really did. Nowadays, that's essentially the whole problem, right? Like, that we're being forced into a corner because we're not allowed to have freedom of association or the right to discriminate, right? Which happens across the world, even in even in business, no shirt, no shoes, no service, right? It's essential. It's essential quality that is applied across the board, but they nitpick against us, right? And that's the issue. And essentially, if you got rid of a lot of these institutions that are like holding you down, preventing you from associating by yourselves, then you would see that. You would see bands of people coming together based on ideas, genetics, or principles, and creating communities and creating commerce.
Well, we also make a distinction between like the modern Jew capitalist with the central banks and like what an actual free market in the money itself would look like, where you have competing currencies and you have things backed by real value. So we don't really have the opportunity for the government at this point.
Well,
so like,
even if you retained a central bank, but you stabilized the currency like Chicago school style, then you're going to do a lot better as far as that. the economic argument in my reading, the economic arguments for free trade are almost undeniable, but that assumes that actual free trade is occurring, and there might be a situation where it's not worth it, right? So, like, yeah, if you have a communist country that's hell bent on destroying you, you don't necessarily want to trade and have them benefit of like your technological advancement, right? You don't want them, you know, they're not looking for a win-win, so of course you're not going to engage in that. But generally, when trade is allowed, you get a better allocation, like a more efficient allocation of resources, and you know that's going to generate wealth better, which in general will benefit you. The problem,
But it also allows for the degradation of traditional institutions because you have young people who are seeking the wealth, and if that means being an opportunist and working for some foreign, you know, government or power, or not government, but working for a, you know, a foreign commercial entity and absorbing their values and spreading that among your class, you're playing with that which all the rest of the economic activity is based upon, which is a moral system. And each individual is not really responsible enough to make decisions in light of the good of the whole society. So freedom of association, you know, can lead to people associating in destructive ways.
So this is kind of a chicken or the egg thing. Sorry, let me just tie this in real quick and then let you go. This kind of a chicken or the egg thing. I think there's been a breakdown in values, which has not necessarily tied directly to, you know, capitalism or whatever. I think the values degrading have led to what you're talking about, not what you're talking about leading to the values degrading. I think it's hard to say for sure, but I think it's, you know, are we putting the cart before the horse kind of thing in that analysis or not?
A lot of the system, I mean, to tie into that, a lot of the system in the olden days, like in the 1700s when this were first conceived, were the idea that everybody was a Christian back then. And the idea is that, example, it's like the American Constitution and presumes that everybody's trustworthy. You know what I mean? What's freedom? You know, how can you be a free man unless you have a moral centre? And that's the thing. I mean, that's one of the reasons I think the church is being attacked. It's not just the stability of the family, but it's also right. There's no God. There's just your truth. And likewise, therefore anything can happen. So likewise, like in a business world, normally, like if everyone's like Wall Street, it used to be my words, my bond. No, you can't trust anybody there. So there's been, like tying into what Nine's saying, there's definitely the moral concept part of this equation is like missing. That's the thing. If we had a moral centre, trade would be a bit more, how would you call it now, trustworthy. You know what I mean? If you knew even if other people in other countries were doing like the Protestant work ethic, they're not trying to fuck you over.
Okay, so being that, you know, having the moral framework is so like important, if it's so important, then why not, you know, restrict freedom of speech and don't allow degeneracy to be spoken publicly? Not in private. I mean, don't censor private speech, but in a public forum, if you have standards, then you can hypothetically keep the moral standards up, right?
Well, so how these things were enforced previously was through social ostracization, where, you know, if you didn't meet the society's moral standards, we would all just not associate with you. We'd leave you out in the cold, then you'd end up starving, you know.
And that's what leftists do now, and it's very effective. Right.
Right. So we need to take this back as a principle. If you don't agree with us, you know, we're not going to do business with you. We're not going to, you know, sell you the food you need. We're not going to help you build your house. We're not going to do any of that. Now it becomes kind of hard in a mass, you know, sort of civilization, you know, where on a tribal level, it's a much easier standard to enforce. But yeah, you're exactly right. That's exactly what the left does, except for the left uses the power of the state to do this.
Well, I would like to, you know, I would like to use state power to sort of harm my enemies in that way, right? I'd like to use it as sort of a weapon against them. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. However, as far as advocating that as the principle that I want society based upon, I'm not so sure. I just because you know, ideally, yeah, okay, we're gonna stop the degeneracy, right? We're gonna crack down on it, but then it kind of comes, well, where's that line? How is that decided? And then there's too much at risk doing that, I feel, and I don't want a society. I wouldn't necessarily want to live in a society that's the standard. in.
Right.
But as far as
This was
using
done-
it to
this
win,
was handled in
certainly.
this was handled in ancient Greece. The Athenian colonies were primarily a vehicle for removing political dissidents. If someone like more or less agreed with the Athenian model but had some differences of opinion, you could go and found a colony on the Athenian model that would conform to that. But each community has to have strict guidelines for what's acceptable. Like Socrates had to go. If they didn't kill Socrates, his influence probably would have upset the balance of power in Athens.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
and
in the,
like,
in
you
the
know,
real world, I mean, in the ideal world, though, it'd be like, right, everyone's allowed a forum, and it's the market of ideas. In other words, people laugh at you if it's wrong. You shouldn't have to like resort to political violence or like, I mean, ostracism will come from itself. You know what I mean? If everyone just laughs at you and goes, that idea is stupid, then you'll just say, all right, then I retract my idea. Or if you're intent on it, you can do like you said, form a colony somewhere else.
Right. Well, and we're kind of in dire straits at the time, so I'm not opposed to putting some of the principles aside to fix the issue, because if we just stick to our principles and we lose, that doesn't help. So putting the principles aside to make sure that our people continue to exist on this earth, that's I think that's fine in the short term, but for the long term, we do back to those. Like, I'm not even opposed necessarily to certain social programs, demographic sort of fixes, to get our birth rates back on track and to get, white people back on, back in charge of the civilizations that we've built.
Essentially,
But,
you're using
we're
this.
kind of looking at things in an abstract way as well.
Essentially, you're using these strategies so that you can deal with the out group, but essentially, you wouldn't want to be doing this to your own in group, and I think that's the point.
Right.
That's what I disagree with, because in your in group, you're always going to have a new generation coming along who thinks they know everything. Young people tend to think that. And the way that traditional societies handle this is that no one is, not everyone is equally free to speak. If you're free to speak if people believe that you are, competent or qualified to speak on something. And that's a cultural norm. That's not coercively enforced all the time. It's a cultural norm.
Well,
but just
if that was
in a
applied,
libertarian setting,
if that was applied today, then
all right, hold up real quick.
None
So
of
in a
us would have the
libertarian
ability-
setting,
Good.
people who would have a say. Sorry, the people who would have a say would be the people who are the property owners who have earned it. So the children, the young generation, unless they've really kicked ass and property and obtained some wealth, they're really not going to have much influence. So this is kind of a vanguard against that, actually. When the landed aristocracy, so to speak, is the one making the bulk of the decisions because they've earned that position in society, you get the protection of culture, the protection of the genetic group. All this stuff kind of stems naturally from that.
There's different structures too. I think you can look at even like the proprietarian model, where like you have different spheres, right? You have the commons, and you have like the aristocracy and stuff like that. And then the aristocracy, maybe you would put some restrictions, right? Like, because they are the ruling elite or whatever that are making actual decisions. But the commons, they feel free to different angles and try to decide between each other and have the freedom to, have this sort of speech. And I think the way that he lays it out is between progressives, conservatives, and libertarians, basically. Like, and I think he's saying this basically on like different evolutionary strategies. Like progressives, like always want to, change the social borders towards more freedoms. The libertarians want the economic freedoms, and the conservatives might want to keep things the same, kind of thing. And you would have like a discourse between the three, almost like a parliament, where they come in accordance and they have disagreements, and it basically will always create like a stale Congress, or whatever you want to call it, where it would always balance between each other, and there'd be slight sways here and there that would be more in accordance with what's happening in the market.
Yeah, they have different strategies and they negotiate the benefits that they bring to the table. I think the way he lays it out is like The progressives are good at consumption. And that's actually something that needs to be performed. Like in certain cases, if you don't have an underclass consuming, fidget spinners and stuff like that, that to a certain extent hurts industry.
Yeah, but
although
that's not necessarily. I don't know that that's necessarily true, right? Because that you need just consumers. Because I think that
essentially bullshit.
Yeah, and that also kind of assumes that like constant growth and just buying shit and not say it. Like I think that more has to do with shitty interest rates that are set by central
if you
banks.
make fidget spinners, it's going to hurt your industry, but it's not fucking going to hurt the fucking economy.
Yeah,
I think the point I was making though with the 3-tiered system is in the commons, or like any the public spaces or whatever. Like there should be freedom of speech and public discourse, but when you're in the seats of power or whatever, you're actually in the fucking government or in the aristocracy, right? Like it has to be a little more tiered and structured.
Kurt, the proprietarian thing, I didn't mean to say that that's better for the economy overall, but you have people who are net savers and you have people who are net spenders. The progressives tend to be net spenders, and that, it does give at least political motivation in certain instances, and they can be easily mobilized, and that's a feminine sphere, and he associates it with gossip, right? And that social engineering that the progressives perform in conjunction with their consumptive habits has been used to great effect in the current system. Not a positive effect, a highly harmful one. But there are different strategies at work that negotiate their interests. You can also look at it just conservative versus liberal in general. These are two sides of an evolutionary strategy where if you just have the one, society never changes. If you just have the other, it devolves into chaos immediately. The idea is that you have a system of checks and balances where what each side brings to the table is allowed to be exchanged.
Yeah, the main point, not trying to get into the esoterics of evolutionary strategies amongst people. We could, I don't care, but I guess what I was really just trying to point out is it's not like this universal thing where you can just say, not everybody has freedom of speech or everybody has freedom of speech. I think it applies, if you're a high political figure or something like that, right? Then you'll have to check your speech. There's like secrets and things you have to keep, and if you're within an order or a way of doing things, right, you got to keep it in a certain way and keep it that way. But within the commons, you want to have that kind of the volatility that's controlled in the terms of dealing with each other and competing with each other that freedom of speech allows, right? So I think it's very essential to keep freedom of speech in the future, but maybe not to its ultimate extent.
So what do you do when you have a group coming in like, people who want to convert you to Islam? A lot of people are very suggestible. Don't let them in the first place. Yeah, exactly.
Don't let them in.
We already want to restrict immigration.
Right.
But this goes back to
my own. I would never bring them into my home. I would never associate with them. I would never do business with them. I would sanction them at every possible level. And, I think society as a whole would have mechanisms to do that. We could talk about state mechanisms and free market mechanisms, but I think we're not seeing a natural movement in that area. We're seeing a forced push to bring those people in. I think if it was just a natural free market sort of setting, those people would never be allowed in, because who wants to be around those fucking people?
And what do they provide? Nothing really. So
they're not providing economic benefit.
They are helping the state, though, and that's why they're there. It's an extension, I think, of Operation Gladio, the state behind by NATO to keep control over fascist organizations in European countries, so that would keep the specter of fascism and give justification for increasing centralization of military power. And then Gladio B, we did it with Islamists, primarily in Turkey, but spreading from there. And then we've been doing the same privateering situation for the past decades. Now bring it home domestically. And there's all sorts that combined with progressivism, which is interesting that the Islamists are working so well with the progressives. but ultimately it's doing the same thing that the
That's
Romans
because
did.
they are progressives in the modern time, because they want to have a change, right? Like a volatile social change, right? And so in this sense are progressive, but I'm sure once they developed what they wanted, right, they would become a conservative, right? It has nothing
Right.
to do with the modern progressives and their social policies. It has to do with progressivism, right, which is the change.
Empower in-groups that motivate change away from a status quo. Don't allow a status quo to develop so that there's never a unified base that can reject your centralized authority. That's the strategy. That's why the Muslims are there. To keep, white people from being able to control these countries, which they are the ones who naturally could. I mean, you look at majority Korean countries, Korea exclusively, and you want to displace that central power base. It's all real politics. You look at it from like, oh, they're political idealists. They believe in multicultural. No, none of the people making these decisions believe in it. They're using it. They're making real political calculations with using the political idealism as a front. Right?
Well, everybody has some stance, right? And so they'll use whatever they can to get to that stance, and that's basically what they're doing.
And I'd say they don't care about the culture that exists. They don't care about bringing in the other culture. They don't care about those cultures. They care about their elite culture, and they want to preserve that. And a nationalist uprising would be detrimental to the preservation of that culture. They have their in-group. I mean, obviously, it's a lot of there's a religious element, you'd say, there, Judaism.
Right.
I see what you did there. Yeah,
Yeah.
and also
They
with
have
like
the
modern
power to
technology.
enforce that idea, though, as well, where we're trying to gain enough power to enforce our ideas.
Yeah, but it's also hard because I mean not hard, but with all this modern technology and communications and planes and shit, it's like people. It's a lot easier for people to move around, and it's a lot easier for the elites to organize. Whereas in the past, it was just like elites were locked to their land, so they had to have had a good relationship with like the commoners, and like they didn't even have a choice. It's just like, yep, like we gotta develop good relations. Now it's now the elites can fly over, I don't know, they can go to Abu Dhabi or something like that, and then just like hang out with other elites and be like, miss, aren't we so privileged and enlightened above the masses of our countries? Let's turn our backs on them and just have our exclusive club at their expense.
Now, what I find interesting is the last Bilderberg meeting. Apparently, there was actually a divide about this. Like, are we going to continue pushing the Islamic migration and funding terrorist organizations, or is the blowback actually going to be out of hand? Yeah, they're for the first time they're actually divided on this issue. Whether they should change.
I'm sure it's like the people at the top. I'm sure they have like conflicts. To what degree, like they work for the interest of their people, like I don't know. But
what was the difference in the Bilderberg? I'm sorry, I missed that. I'm curious.
Well, you have people who are now saying we shouldn't be, and Donald Trump kind of represents this. We should stop funding terrorists, which, I mean, we funded Al Qaeda, ISIL. Everyone knows that to this point. So that's it's a long-standing policy going back to Operation Gladio and Gladio B, and that's a pretty big geopolitical or geostrategic shift. And what is the establishment going to shift to, if not that? If they can't use the Muslims effectively? Because basically, I think they're realizing, having these people in their countries, they're realizing like maybe we can't actually control these people after all. Maybe they're not.
Send in the Koreans.
What it's doing is it's waking people up ahead of schedule, which is going to threaten their power more. So I guess this is just me speculating, but I'm guessing that the rift between the two factions would be like, okay, do we keep this going and then just deal with the blowback, which we could lose if there's a mass uprising, or do we back it back a little bit and continue a longer term strategy of the watching the demographics decline in other ways? As far as the incentives from the government to increase the quote unquote minority populations while decreasing the white populations through standard taxation models and promoting abortion and promoting just the usual degeneracy without alarming the K-selected people's fight or flight mechanism, their danger response mechanism.
Yeah, they've broke into two groups, haven't they? Whereby you've got the frog in the boiling water group who wants to maintain the status quo and still act like vampires, but at least maintain control. And then the accelerationists who are just letting it run amok. So, you know what I mean? It makes perfect sense, though. Because, like I say, if you're in control of a system, though, you don't want to jeopardize your control over it. So these accelerationists doing the migrant crisis of 2014 and 15, how many people became red pilled just off that one event? What a fucking mishap if you're a political establishment to do something that stupid to wake the masses up.
Like, wait, what event in particular are you referring to?
The migrant crisis. You know, for instance, Angela Merkel. She could have easily. We've discussed this before. We've said like the elites could have easily kept on immigration, as it were, the trickle, and there wouldn't have been this massive right-wing backlash that you've got now, where people are like waking up, or like Trump and Brexit's happening because of this shit. They even said we probably wouldn't have had Brexit if there weren't a migrant crisis, because that was still fresh on our TV sets as the Brexit vote were happening. So we're thinking like, this does factor in. So again, the elites, they've caused Trump and Brexit by acting too fast. They could have kept everything as it were before.
Yeah, frog in boiling water. I see what you mean.
Right.
Yeah.
Keck in boiling water.
Fast, and we're noticing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could have boiled Pepe alive. You wouldn't have known.
Right. Well, they've been playing a long enough game anyway. You know, it doesn't make sense to accelerate it so much, and the amount of blowback they're already getting is huge. You know, let alone if they open the floodgates all the way.
I think they've signaled quite a few times that they thought that they were going to finally have the one system, right? Like back in, I believe it was like 1999 or something like that, that they predicted that would be the year that they had their fulfillment, right? And it keeps getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. So maybe they're just getting impatient, or maybe I'm wrong entirely. I don't know.
Another aspect of this is that they're also concerned with the Muslim world. I mean, also considering that a lot of these people are Zionists, they want to expand the state of Israel eventually, and they want to destabilize the countries near them. So if they can, maybe perhaps the calculation of the accelerationists is that if the West gets pissed off enough, maybe that'll take care of the Islam question in the Middle East for Israel.
Right. This is the greater Israel agenda stuff. And, you know, why the whole plan to topple, you know, the 7 Middle Eastern countries within 2 decades or whatever it was.
This shit is crazy. You're all just a bunch of fucking anti-Semites.
Private property capitalism and egalitarian multiculturalism are as an unlikely combination as socialism and cultural conservatism. And with that, we're coming to a close. I'm going to go back into the panelists.
But first, breaking news, nigga. Breaking news. Some protesters rushed the stage of the assassination play. The Trump assassination play.
Yeah.
So that showed up on Drudge.
Shut it down.
What happened with it?
Some protesters rushed the stage, according to these headlines. I'm not sure exactly what the details are, but sounds like people are fighting back.
Oh, glory be.
Well, that's nice to hear.
The resistance, man.
All right. 9, not an argument. Closing thoughts?
Yeah, just, you know, keep doing your research out there, fam. Don't buy into the whole left-right dichotomy. You know, there's more ideas and options out there. You just got to really get nuanced on all the finite points. And, yeah, keep learning.
All right. Based Korean. What's up, man?
What's up, niggas?
Closing thoughts?
Yeah, I like what 9 Not an Argument said. You know, be nuanced. You know, don't try to. Don't just buy, don't, I do this a lot, but don't just, you know, hold on to other people's positions just because, you know, they said you got to work it out yourself, and I still work on it. Also, the Korean War was a lie. The Korean War was a lie. The Korean War was a lie, and we've all been lied to by people to serve the world oligarchs. I sound like a right-wing conspiracy nut, but that's me now. Homogenous ethno-states for everyone, please. God damn it.
All right, yeah, Hirohito did nothing wrong. All right, Eric, closing thoughts, man?
You guys are very interesting, and I've enjoyed this discussion. So thanks.
Yeah. I'm glad you're here, man. I always like to have somebody that I actually sit down and engage and kind of challenge some ideas. Iron Man, closing thoughts?
Yeah, look, I'm not the most emotional guy, and I don't normally make emotional appeals, but I just want to live in a world where people are free, free to all live beneath a rainbow and hate each other for being a different color and creed. The freedom to verbally abuse, fight, and kill each other as God intended, without the self-righteous interference of hippie dipshits and their totalitarian philosophies. Is it really that too much to ask? I've never expected anything from other people, and the good Lord knows I'm not asking for much now. Here's this message. I beg you, I beseech you, please join with me now in a heartfelt prayer for national borders, mutual assured destruction, and an ongoing healthy distrust in the hearts of all mankind. Amen.
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 All right, Jaffa, closing thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Pleasure to talk to you all. And let's keep up the birth rate, guys. Go and take some Viagra, whatever it takes. Eat some crust, drink some egg whites, something like that.
Here to that. All right, Kiki.
Traditionalism is cancer. So is all religion, including Christianity.
From the guy who fucks dogs.
I just defend people who fuck dogs. I don't fuck dogs myself.
And ladies with dicks.
I just eat dogs.
All right, Rick Turpin.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, chaps. I do
problem.
beseech the audience, please watch the Britcast. It's the best British podcast on the internet.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. All I can leave you with is 3 sentences. Swole is the goal. Size is the prize. So let's get some gains, motherfucker. Let's roll.
Hoorah! Zach,
That's
closing thoughts, man.
Yeah, Rick. How many Muslims died in that fire?
Well, there's 70 fatalities at the moment.
Well, the truth of the matter is, the number is #not enough.
I see what you did there.
6 Gorillion.
All right, take me out to the ball game.